semacam ini untuk menyamai berat sampah plastik di seluruh dunia. Apa yang terjadi jika plastik tidak terbuang ke TPA? Banyak yang akhirnya terbuang ke sini.
Ini adalah lokasi menyelam di Tulamben, di lepas pantai Bali. Atraksi populer di kalangan wisatawan yang sekarang menjadi seperti ini. Ikan-ikan berenang melewati lautan sampah.
Yang menyedihkan, itu bukan bagian terburuknya.
Ini adalah pulau sampah di Laut Karibia. Di Samudra Pasifik, pulau-pulau sampahnya lebih besar lagi. Kita mungkin tak melihatnya setiap hari, tapi pulau-pulau ini nyata.
Semua plastik ini akhirnya terurai, tapi tidak akan hilang. Partikel-partikel plastik dimakan organisme terkecil di lautan. Kemudian, mereka dimakan oleh organisme yang lebih besar, lalu yang lebih besar lagi. Sampai akhirnya, plastik ada di ikan yang kita makan dan berakhir di perut kita. Butuh ratusan juta rupiah per hari dan lusinan armada kapal untuk mengelola sampah plastik yang mengapung di Samudra Pasifik. Lantas, berapa yang dibutuhkan untuk membersihkan seluruh sampah di dunia? Siapa yang tahu?
Tapi ada satu hal yang bisa kita lakukan. Bijak menggunakan plastik. The Pledge.
Selamat pagi.
Vice dan Aku.
Good morning. For all the guests, kepada seluruh tamu, saya ingin mengumumkan bahwa acara akan segera dimulai. Kepada tamu undangan yang masih berada di luar, dimohon untuk segera masuk ke dalam ruangan. Announcement to all of the guests. This morning event is going to start soon, and I hope all of the guests that is still outside this room could enter the room now. Sekali lagi pengumuman untuk seluruh tamu hadirin, acara akan segera kami mulai. Dimohon untuk menempatkan diri pada tempat duduk masing-masing. Dan kepada seluruh tamu yang masih berada di luar ruangan, dimohon untuk segera menempatkan diri ke dalam ruangan ini, ke tempat duduk masing-masing. For all the guests, this event is going to begin soon, and I hope all the guests outside of the room could enter the room now. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and greetings to all of you. Welcome to Semarang, the port of Java. I am Irene Winas and I'm really delighted to be your master of ceremony for today's Road to G20 event. First of all, I'd like to welcome the honorable guests. Let us welcome the first, Bapak Snyder Klasein Hasudungan Siahaan, Deputy Minister for Development Funding, the Ministry of National Development Planning, Bappenas. Good morning, Bapak, welcome. And the next one, welcome Ms. Fifi Yulaswati, Advisor to the Minister of National Development, Planning for Social Affairs and Poverty Reduction, Bappenas. Good morning. And the next one, we also welcome Bapak Jeffrey P. Cohen, USAID Indonesia Mission Director. Welcome, Bapak Jeff. And the next, we welcome Bapak Ide Bagus Alid Wiridana, Regional Secretary of Denpasar City. The next, we also welcome Bapak Armando Marulitua, Assistant Vice President Financing Division 2, PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur. The next, we welcome Ms. Regula Sheikh, Circulate Capital Managing Director, Asia. Good morning, Ms. Sheikh. And then the next, we welcome Bapak Douglas Midland, U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Also, we have Ibu Nurdiana Darus, the Head of Corporate Affairs and Sustainability, Unilever Indonesia. Welcome, Ibu. And the next, we also welcome Bapak Danielo, Prevented Ocean Plastic Southeast Asia, POPSI. Good morning, Bapak Daniel. The next, we welcome Bapak Bima Ariestianto, CEO and founder of PT Resiki Solusi Indonesia. Good morning, Bapak. And the next one, we also welcome all invited guests from the Coordinating Ministry of Maritime Affairs, Ministry of National Development Planning, National Development Planning Agency, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Public Works, Ministry of Health. Welcome. Please give applause to our guests. And also the next, we welcome invited guests from Semarang City Local Government. Welcome and good morning. And then virtual invited guests from G20 member countries. Development Working Group of G20, development partners of private sector and also local organizations and communities. And all guests that are here today and also joining this meeting virtually. Welcome and please give applause for today's event. Let us give support and spirit so that we can do this event well today. Ladies and gentlemen, may we praise God that has given us salvation and blessings because of the favor of health we could participate in the road to G20 event, making blended finance work lessons from the Asia Pacific region. Please give us a round of applause. Before we getting started, please allow me to read the agenda for today. In our opening session, there will be opening remarks from the USAID Indonesia Mission Director, followed by a keynote speech on blended finance from the Deputy Minister of Development Funding, Bappenas. Afterwards, there will be a panel presentation on mobilizing capital through blended finance. This session will be closed with a 10-minute break accompanied by a short video on blended finance. After the break, our second session is a panel discussion about blended finance to combat ocean plastic pollution, followed by a closing statements to end the event. And this event will start at 9 a.m. until 12 p.m. West Indonesia time. That's all for today's agenda, today's rundown. We hope that all of our sessions will extend our understanding about blending financing. And without further ado, let us proceed to the first agenda. That's the opening remarks that will be given by Bapak Jeff Cohen, USAID Indonesia Mission Director. Pak Jeff, the floor is yours. Please give applause.
Good morning. Assalamualaikum. Salam sejahtera. Selamat pagi yang terhormat Deputy Menteri Bappenas Bapak Schneider Siahaan dan Ibu Vivi staf ahli Bappenas serta Bapak dan Ibu undangan dari perwakilan negara sahabat, mitra pembangunan, sektor swasta, pemerintah pusat, dan masyarakat. Senang sekali saya bisa hadir di Samarang dalam diskusi yang menarik ini. Pertemuan ini sangat penting untuk memperkuat kerjasama kita dan bersama menggali solusi dari tantangan pembangunan yang kita hadapi. Pertama, saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Bappenas serta G20 Development Working Group yang bersama USAID mempersiapkan acara ini. Kami gembira bisa menjadi bagian dari diskusi tentang blended finance untuk memajukan prioritas pembangunan dengan melibatkan sektor swasta. Mohon maaf, saya masih belajar bahasa Indonesia. Selanjutnya saya akan berbicara dalam bahasa Inggris. Good morning again. I will proceed in English, which is my native language, although I'm a Detroiter, so our English is always a bit challenged too. For over 60 years, the United States government has worked through the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, to partner with countries around the world working to address our shared development challenges. Now, all countries are seeking to advance a post-pandemic economic recovery while also dealing with transnational threats like climate change and food security. Development stakeholders, including international development agencies like USAID, national governments, and non-governmental organizations, often find that the challenges we face are more complex than any one entity can address on its own. Private sector engagement, leadership, and action are critical to ensure that markets develop in ways that not only drive economic growth, but also safeguard the environment, while they also strive to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Blended finance, which uses donor or government funding to de-risk and catalyze private sector investment, is an important tool for facilitating creative partnerships that not only yield profits, which are essential, but also drive sustainable outcomes. USAID recognizes that private finance is critical to advancing our shared development objectives, and that blended finance is a highly effective tool to attract private financing to fund bankable and sustainable investments. By mobilizing private blended finance, international development partners like USAID can amplify the impact of our own programming, change the way that markets function, and build resilience to transnational threats like climate change and food insecurity. In support of these efforts, USAID has launched an 8-year global program around the world known as Catalyze, which will mobilize $2 billion in investments through the use of blended finance mechanisms. Catalyze will work with the private sector around the globe to develop commercially viable business models, expand sustainable social services, optimize supply chains, and advance inclusive growth. Here in Indonesia, USAID has partnered with the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, or DFC, on multiple blended finance programs valued at more than $300 million. Some have provided financing to Indonesian healthcare firms and essential good distributors in the wake of the COVID pandemic. Others are promoting the rapid adoption of sustainable fisheries and rubber production, while even a few more are mobilizing private capital and commercial lending focused on sustainable agriculture and environmental stewardship. One example is with ADM Capital. Later today, we will witness the signing of an MOU that is part of a $35 million loan portfolio guarantee with Circulate Capital and the DFC in support of investments in the recycling sector throughout Asia. So far, with DFC support, this program has yielded $11 million in new investments with Indonesian recycling firms, which we'll hear from today. This is an important step towards combating plastic waste, which is a key priority for all of us around the globe, especially in Southeast Asia. And a key priority for the US government, which has recently codified this priority through the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act, put forward and ratified by the US Congress. Today's session will be divided in two parts. The first section will provide an overview of blended finance in Indonesia and the Asia-Pacific region. Presenters will share their perspectives on the opportunities and challenges of blended finance in meeting sustainable development goals. The second section will highlight blended finance in action, using USAID and DFC's work as examples to combat ocean plastics by improving the plastics recycling value chains in Indonesia. Plastic pollution is a global concern. The OECD estimates that we need $25 billion a year in investment to address the issue. However, only less than $1 billion has been mobilized. The gap is large and getting larger. Blended finance is one way to bridge that gap. Here in Indonesia, U.S. government-supported blended finance with Circulate Capital is investing in 3 Indonesian firms. These firms are developing scalable and sustainable solutions to reduce plastic pollution, strengthen the resilience of the recycling supply chain, and improve livelihoods in the sector. USAID technical assistance complements these investments. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit a location that, with good intentions, the government of Indonesia built a location to collect and sort through waste. Unfortunately, the market analysis and the activity that ensued in the community were not sufficient to make the site as viable as possible. This is where USAID can step in, provide some technical assistance to tie the activity of the community with the activity of the market to ensure future success. I look forward to returning to Semarang, eating lumpia again, and visiting this project after it's provided some support to the community. Collectively, we are advancing the circular economy by extending the use of raw materials, such as plastics, and creating market conditions that encourage private sector action. The second section will feature a discussion between stakeholders on multiple sides of this partnership and will be moderated by Doug Midland, the Managing Director of USDFC here in Indonesia. We hope that these two sessions today will spur collaboration with global, regional, and local stakeholders to test, scale, and share solutions to advance collective goals in solid waste management as well as other sectors. I very much look forward to the discussion today. Terima kasih banyak.
What a nice Indonesian language, Pak Kohan. Thank you, Pak Jeff from USAID Indonesia Mission Director for the opening remarks. Our next section will be a keynote speech presented by the Deputy Minister of Development Funding Bappenas. We invite Bapak Snyder Klasein Hasudungan Siahaan to the stage. Please give applause.
Good morning to you all. Let me say about the remarks for the road to G20 summit workshop today. How we can making blended finance work. Yang terhormat USAID Indonesian Mission Director Bapak Jeffrey Cohen, distinguished speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak dan Ibu sekalian yang hadir, yang online dan juga yang offline, yang saya hormati, very good morning, may peace be upon us dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. I would like firstly to acknowledge and thank you to Bapak Jeffrey Cohen, USAID Indonesia Mission Director, who has just provided remarks, as well as our distinguished speakers and panelists. This has been very monumental, especially organizing the panel presentation and discussion, making blended finance work, lessons from the Asia-Pacific region. My high appreciation also goes to all the speakers and panelists for sharing the ideas, thoughts, and experiences to find the best way or solution in making blended finance applicable in Indonesia and developing countries. On this opportunity, as the chair of Development Working Group of G20, I would like to share to you that the G20 has repeatedly voiced its support of innovative financing mechanisms. Under the Saudi presidency in 2022, the G20 engaged international organizations and multilateral development banks to share their best practices on blended finance. In 2021, the Italian presidency reaffirmed that development actors use their capability to mobilize private sector financing. And now, under the Indonesian presidency in 2022, the G20 will advance a set of precepts known as principles to scale up blended finance in developing countries, which seek to provide blended finance policy and practitioner frameworks that enable developing countries to effectively attract, deploy, and scale up blended finance, as well as providing guidance on how to apply these principles to development projects. Distinguished speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, blended finance is about fund mobilization. Blended finance is also about finance engineering. However, above all, blended finance is about creativity and innovation to allocate risk according to investors' appetite. I'm sure all of you who participate in this event agree that creating an innovation environment, we will need less regulation, not more. Consequently, it will give creative opportunities at the maximum level. However, we are fully aware that blended finance is about managing money, public funds, and even some sort of state budgets. We also understand that managing financing, especially public finances, must have unambiguous, clear-cut decisions which easy to be understood. In other words, there is no room for gray areas, simple, black and white, and straightforward. Hence, our challenge is how to create an innovative regulatory and conducive policy climate, while at the same time we must strictly apply the principles of good governance. Indeed, we must have a sound policymaking that encourages accountable innovation. I believe all governments in the world already have the same commitments, but again, usually the devil is in the details. With this workshop, I would like to get insightful ideas from all panelists and participants regarding the most important aspect of implementing government support to promote blended finance and how to make it work. Blended finance also demands our capacity in development financing modalities and schemes. It means we need capable human resources in this area. In addition to that, the development of networks between stakeholders in this regard is also necessary. I am grateful for the presence and participation of global financial institutions in this workshop, and I hope this can build, expand, and strengthen networks between all actors involved in the development and implementation of blended finance. Regulatory and capacity matters in financing management will determine our ability to mobilize funds and invest these funds in productive and impactful projects. Distinguished speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion, I would like to share some of our experiences and concerns, which I hope can trigger discussion in this workshop to produce concrete solutions. I can say that the proper and comprehensive regulation regarding blended finance is not yet available in Indonesia, while this is actually a catalyst to encourage the creation and innovation of funding. In some cases, unfortunately, this is the absence of the regulation is a prohibition from creating innovation and financing engineering. Therefore, I really hope that I can get inputs on concrete and proportional arrangements, including how to arrange cooperation between NGOs, private companies, and also guarantees from the state. In Indonesia, blended finance projects have always been catalyzed by our development partners through grant fundings in collaboration with NGOs. To this background, on this occasion, I would like to encourage our colleagues from the government of Indonesia and development partners to promote and enable the provision of grants directly from development partners to NGOs for supporting national development targets, especially in community development. I also invite our government colleagues to seek possibility and craft a policy to provide government support for such grant delivery scheme, including tax facilitation. The development of these regulations is also expected to encourage the use of blended finance as a complement to the state budget and public-private partnership. With blended finance, we hope to be able to address investment financing needs in areas that cannot be covered neither by the state budget nor private sector with profit motive. In addition, adequate human resource capacity is needed to be able to operate the mechanics of the blended finance. We hope that development partners and global financial institutions will not only assist in the provision of funds, but also assist our development stakeholders in the development of financing schemes, project design, and as well as management. Our PPP experience shows that even though the Indonesian government is familiar with detailed guidance in finance engineering, human capacity to manage incoming funds and to capture the right network is still very much needed. In one study, Indonesian people have been known as one of the generous. The nature of generosity is very large and potential as a social capital, and in some cases it has proven that it is easy for social or non-profit organizations or even public figures to mobilize funds in Indonesia. Moreover, the gotong royong tradition, which literally means cooperation, is one of the efforts how the trust is to be built. However, this can be eroded if the public has lost trust. Therefore, we have no option but presenting visible projects and accountable management as well as evidence in a meaningful way. Distinguished speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, another thing that I would like to emphasize here is that we do not have to focus on developing large-scale blended finance projects. In our opinion, this blended finance can perform to close the gap that cannot be filled by the state budget, which generally small-scale and last-mile projects at local level. Understanding the local context is one of the keys in scaling up blended finance. Reaching scale in blended finance will require cooperation between development actors to ramp up existing practices. With that in mind, through the development of blended finance at local and small scale and last mile projects, we can encourage localization of the sustainable development goals. Today we will hear about how blended finance can be used to advance development in multiple sectors. Such example is the USAID's Clean Cities Blue Ocean, where the program is piloting the solution for coordinated solid waste system with increased local capacity. One of the piloting of this project is in Semarang, where all stakeholders worked to support the expansion of materials aggregation center through its partnership with the Prevented Ocean Plastic Southeast Asia or POPSI project. From the development partner side, we are pleased to see two representatives of bilateral United States donor institutions, USAID, which provides technical assistance and directly implements development projects, as well as the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, which provides financing to advance private sector development in a variety of sectors, including solid waste management. Distinguished speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, this event has given the opportunity for all of us to share our experiences of deploying development finance to progress the sustainable development goals, primarily in Indonesia. I'm looking forward to very productive and fruitful discussion during this gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder, for the keynote speech. And I would like to ask you to stay on the stage because after this, Bapak Jeff will have a souvenir giveaway special for Mr. Snyder. I invite Pak Jeff Cohen for be on the stage. Maybe it could be in the middle. Yes. Here it is, the souvenir from Pak Jeff Cohen to Pak Snyder. Okay, maybe first we would like to take a picture. Oh, you want to open it? Okay. And here it is, Pak Jeff and Pak Snyder. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, our first session is a panel presentation about mobilizing capital through blended finance. We will have 5 speakers for the session. The first speaker is Ms. Fifi Yulaswati, Advisor to the Minister of National Development Planning, Bapanas, for Social Affairs and Poverty Reduction. The second speaker is Ibu Regula Sheikh, Circulate Capital Managing Director. And the third speaker is Bapak Douglas Mitlin, U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. And the fourth speaker is Bapak Armando Marulitua, Assistant Vice President Financing Division 2, PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur. And our last speaker in the first session is Bapak Ide Bagus Alit Wiridana, Regional Secretary of Denpasar City. So, distinguished guests, let us invite Ms. Fifi Yulaswati to provide an overview of the main challenges and opportunities in using blended finance to enhance public service delivery in Indonesia. Ibu Fifi will further discuss about how the enabling environment can best attract funding from both international donors and domestic philanthropy. Ms. Yulaswati, the floor is yours. Please give applause for Ms. Yulaswati.
Yang saya hormati Pak Jeffrey Cohen, Pak Snyder yang mungkin baru saja meninggalkan. Yang terhormat Pak Jeffrey Cohen, yang terhormat Bapak Ibu dari USAID, yang saya hormati juga Bapak Ibu panelis, dan tentunya Bapak Ibu sekalian yang saya muliakan, very good morning, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera dan salam sehat untuk semua. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give some context about the progress as well as some challenges for Indonesia context in the developing an ecosystem for the blended finance. Speaking about the financing has been always challenging, particularly for the development context. Based on our roadmap, the SDGs roadmap 2018, the cost of achieving SDGs up until 2030 is huge. It was estimated about 4.75 trillion US dollar, which remaining the gap for about 1 trillion US dollar. During the COVID, we haven't yet estimate or we haven't have a newer revision for the roadmap. We are still in the process of it. But based on the OECD calculations, it is estimated that due to the COVID, the finance gap was increasing to about 70%. And in fact, many of us, including the privates and other non-state actors, has pursue also try forward to the sustainability. So in fact, actually, the challenges is how to converge and of course, how to create a proper enabling environment that can be, all the efforts can be scaled up as well as accelerated. Mobilizing financing is actually about delivering catalytic impact. 2030 is not so far. It's less than a decade, actually, it's only 8 years ahead. So how to mobilize, that's one thing, but the bigger or more significant effort is how to increase the catalytic impact, including accelerating all the process and leveraging of the investment for the goodness of the people, for the, not only for the prosperity, the people qualities of life, but also the quality of the planet. Of course, with all the partnership and peace. So our homework now, how to mobilize the finance and delivering the impact for the people. fortunately, blended finance is not new. In fact, for Asia, 3 countries, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Indonesia, has been the top of the countries in blended finance practice. The rest, other countries, other developing countries in Africa is also quite many, including South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria. So what are the homework then? Actually, when we are talking about combining different sources of public development, it's happening already, but how to create or have a catalytic impact, that's a real homework for ARMS. So how to attract the commercial finance and have common frameworks and understanding for blending, supporting cohesion actions. Of course, at some point we can measure the impact, and also consistent estimates of blended finance market, assess the effectiveness and of the blended finance on the SDGs. So by the end of the day, we could accelerate and get the targets on time. There are 4 actually common blended finance structures. First is how the public and philanthropy investors provide concessional or below market funding or capital structures to provide the capital and as well additional layers of the protections of the private investment. The second is on the public or philanthropic investor provide credit enhancement through guarantee or insurance. For the latter, not many in Indonesia cases. The transaction is associated with the grant funded and the technical assistance. So if we could see the practice in Indonesia, many of the projects bring by the international donors or private entities. And lastly is about the transaction design or preparation in the grant funded. This is one examples among many of them, but the point that I would like to present here is measuring the impact. So not only providing the services of the main project, which is in the renewable energy in Sumba Island, like electricity, solar panels, or power units, but in fact, it provides other impacts in health status. We could see here, we can break out the impact not only for children, but also for male and female, and some impact on the household income, like improving the income as well as the productivity. If in the previous time they only produce two pieces of woven, but after the project they could provide four pieces of woven, and it's doubling the income. And also it creates time saving for producing the corn pounding up until 4 hours, less 4 hours. And of course, it reduces the greenhouse gas emissions. It's quite a lot, yeah, because they change from the firewoods to the electricity. Other example is in the farming, so I'm happy and very excited for the continuation of the MOU today. Pak Jeff also mentioned about the farming as a potential projects. This is coming from SOE projects also in Nusa Tenggara, East Nusa Tenggara, which creates an impact for the household, and the outcome, it can also reduce or contribute to the stunting reduction and extreme poverty. and of course other social aspects. However, there are some challenges why the blended finance ecosystem is not growing as expected. This is coming from the USAID report actually. Despite that there are many attempts or projects, we still have a challenge in the implementation particularly. First is about the absence projects or program or the scoping that are ready for financing. There are some instruments that actually we need to curate of the projects. Likewise in the SDGs bond, for example, we need to provide a strong curations of all the potential projects. We are aware that there are many potential projects, but how to curate that it's aligned with the SDGs, that it could accelerate the SDGs target achievement as well as other projects. And the lack of the blended finance platform is also challenges for us. The blended finance platform that can capture, facilitate, and intermediary source of funding. So there are many potential private entities, and there are many potential projects, but how to link and match, that's the idea that I'm talking about the ecosystem. On the investment side, there are some barriers to address because Indonesia is huge. We are not talking about one or two projects, but we are talking about the dynamics of populations, the geography conditions. So there are some risks that cannot be measured in advance, and also strong estimations and low curations that I mentioned earlier offer perceived as a poor returns for the risk relative to comparable to other investments. So it's about the opportunity cost for blended finance. So what we are now doing, we are finalizing the integrated national financial framework. It is an assessment, a document supported by the UNDP working together with ministries and many other stakeholders. So the idea is through four building blocks. First, about identifying or about the financial landscaping in Indonesia. So we learned a lot about the potential of the blended finance as well as other instruments. And we assess, we evaluate, and review. The third, we should think about how to monitor as well as evaluate. And finally, about the institutionalizations. So in the INFF, we also, this is the landscaping actually about the innovative financing in Indonesia. Not only the public finance, but we go beyond the traditional ones, including the public-private financing, the commercial finance, as well as other private finance. So as you may see here, I think some people here from the Ministry of Finance, we work together for the SDGs bond. Now we are preparing for the second bond, which is much bigger size, and also with Ministry of Coordinating Ministry for Maritime. We are also preparing for the blue finance, which are blue suku, and many other, including crowdfunding with the philanthropy. So the INFF strategy roles is actually to have a better management on the increasingly complex financing landscape, match different types of financing, so how to curate all the potential projects, to monitor and also to review and evaluate. And later on, we are thinking about incentive schemes, because speaking of the incentive, many privates that are working now in sustainable finance, they are, it could leverage their effort as well as scaling up to other private entity. So provide enhanced coherence across different financing policies and also some trade-off, streamline the wide variety of tools and instruments, enhance transparency, support long-term investment, and also strengthening voices. That's the intended of the NFF. The structure on the left, on your right hand side is provide overview. This is very preliminary, that open to discussion actually, but there are some other work going on. Also under the G20 effort, we are working with the coordinating Ministry of Maritime and also Trihita Karana for the Global Blended Finance Alliance, or GBFA. It is hoped that by November at the summit, we can launch the GBFA. The connector, we are thinking about the SDG Financing Hub, which provide enabler functions for the role of the blended finance in the sustainable finance. The oversight, of course, consists not only Bappenas, but we also have Ministry of Finance, the OJK, the BI, and other ministries, related ministries, and some we have the implementation ministries for the projects or partners, because it's beyond the ministries, and also some working groups that consist of the business sector representative, philanthropies, and civil society. To end, I'd like to remind that we are in a decade of action, and in fact it's not a decade, it's only 8 years left. Achieving the SDGs is actually on the way to achieve other commitment, global commitment, which is the Paris Declaration for net zero emissions, and we have to go beyond the government. So working together in collaborations, in the concrete actions, that's the main our homework. So I'm so happy with the MOU, looking forward for the progress, the implementations of the MOU, and urge to use the SDGs targets to mitigate, to adapt, and also create the means of implementation in order to create a bigger impact or catalytic impact. And I heard many efforts and intended project related with the circular economy, and from our study, there are many potential in also transitioning for the green job and also green GDP. So working together in a green transition is another bigger homework that we should chase forward. Thank you very much for your attention. Hope this is could inspire. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Ibu Yulaswati, for a wonderful and fruitful presentation. Next, we invite Ibu Regula Sheikh to explain how Circulate Capital, an emerging market investment management firm, works to finance innovation that scales solutions to the plastic waste and climate change crisis in Asia. Ibu Sheikh, are you ready? The stage is yours. Please give applause to Ibu Sheikh.
Selamat pagi, Mr. Sander Shiahan, Mr. Cohen, and Mrs. Yulaswati, honorable representatives of the Indonesia central and local governments, as well as community representatives, their partners. It is an honor to be here today to introduce Circulate Capital and showcase some of the work we're doing here in Indonesia and other Southeast Asian countries, in partnership with many organizations which are here today in this room, to really unlock blended finance to scale solutions to prevent ocean plastic pollution and advance the circular economy in South and Southeast Asia. Asia is currently at the heart of both the climate and plastic pollution crisis. However, being a consumption and production powerhouse, the region has a huge potential to build on the circular economy and build the economy at scale. By investing in the circular economy for plastics in Asia, for plastic recycling in Asia, investors have the unique opportunity to fight plastic pollution, but also to be at the nexus of climate change and risk mitigation. And they can also capture the value of plastic, which so far has not been seen and basically hauled to the landfill. According to a recent Google study, there are more than $430 billion needed to be invested in Asia in the next 20 years to fulfill the needs of the multinational corporations of recycled plastic to be used in their packaging. There is huge opportunity which has so far not been seen. But where will the money come from? Who will invest this innovation and this infrastructure we need? Those billions will come from institutional investors, those who are so far at the sideline and have mainly focused on traditional infrastructure like roads, like ports. For them to invest, they need to feel comfortable that this is an investable opportunity, that this is a market where you can make money beyond having a tremendous environmental and social impact. And so far, they have not felt comfortable to do so. In order to catalyze the capital of institutional investors, we need to prove that this industry is investable and the sector can generate competitive financial returns. Blended finance mechanisms can play a key role in unlocking that capital. The recycling and circular economy in Asia and the ecosystems around is mainly comprised of small SMEs and family businesses. They are startups, but they're also mid-sized enterprises, and they all have different needs of capital. And blended finance, particularly when we talk about de-risking those investments, has a key role to play. Our approach has so far been very philanthropic, to bridge the gap between philanthropic capital to really financial capital. We currently raised $165 million to be deployed in South and Southeast Asia. We are backed by corporations, multinational corporations, and we're also backed by DFI and USAID, as we heard before by Mr. Cohen. DFI and USAID play a key role in these blended finance mechanisms. But we also need to recognize, from transitioning from philanthropic capital to market capital, that we need ecosystem development. Therefore, we also support philanthropic organizations, and we have been partnering and building a own NGO, which is called the Circular Initiative, which is acting also in Indonesia to build the necessary infrastructure and ecosystems around the actual plastic supply chain. So we have currently two funds. We were established in 2019. The Circular Capital Ocean Fund was really the catalytic mechanism to enter the market. We raised $112 million by multinational corporations and by USAID and DFC. This fund mainly invests alongside the entire supply chain of plastic recycling and solid waste management. It starts upstream with collection of waste and bring it back into the recycling stream and valorize the value. It also invests in digital solutions which enable more transparency and traceability of material. Why is that so important? More than 60% of the plastic globally recycled is collected by the informal sector. Also in Indonesia, there is a big informal sector who lives off the collection of that material and valorizes that material. And to make sure that they get fair pricing, we need transparency. Digital solutions can help here. The second fund we were only able to raise because of the catalytic and incubation nature of our multinational corporation partners in the first fund is the Circular Capital Disrupt. And we raised $53 million so far. This fund is also backed by other organizations like IFC, the International Finance Corporation, European Investment Bank, and Proparco, the French Development Finance Corporation. And again, this would not have been possible without the blended finance mechanism, which we started in 2019. So this blended finance mechanism, and as we heard before, calling it blended finance 2.0 is really moving more towards market-driven capital, whereby the governments with their capital have a role to play in incubating those capital. We have done 3 investments in Indonesia so far. We heard that before, with $11 million, which are guaranteed by USDFC. And this is Riziki with Pak Bima we have here today, and hear more about his business. With Pak Daniel from Popsi, also to hear more about this business. Very glad to have you here. Thank you so much. And then 3D Oasis, a company which is in recycling of PET flakes to be ultimately going back into packaging. It is very important that we invest in a systemic approach, not just in recycling, but also in solid waste management and material recovery. Because the system is only as good as the weakest link. And starting with collection of the material and valorizing it is where we need to start. Today, we have the largest portfolio in South and Southeast Asia. It is a blended portfolio. It is an equity and debt portfolio. And we invested in collection and sorting in India with Nepra and Riziki and Popsi here in Indonesia. We also invested in upcycling of that material we recover, in taking a PET bottle, recycle it so it goes back into another PET bottle, full circular, without waste. This is today possible. It's not rocket science. All it needs is vision, technology which is available, necessary capital, the right policies, and the people's will. It can be done. With this capital we have raised so far, and with our vision of raising additional capital through co-investments, we expect by 2030 to have 10 million tons of plastic pollution prevented, 15 million tons of CO2 avoided or reduced by not burning that material, but bringing that material back to the recycling industry. We expect to have 30 million tons of waste in general managed, and also expect to create significant, well-paid jobs in the industry throughout South and Southeast Asia, ultimately touching upon 7 SDG goals. It is, however, not just about capital. It is about feedstock. It's about providing our companies with expertise through our investors. It is about connecting our companies with the multinational corporations who need that offtake, that material for their packaging. It is about de-risking finance, as we dedicate this session or this event today, but it is also about supportive policies. All that is needed to make this work. Ladies and gentlemen, we're tackling here a systemic problem, and we need systemic solutions. Blended finance is a key to success and has a key role to play, particularly in industries which have been chronically underserved to actually kickstart the investments we desperately needed. I thank you very much. This is really encouraging to see that we have so many dignitaries and representatives in that room. I really look forward to a great discussion and plenty of learning opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Sheikh, for the amazing and fruitful presentation. Next, we'd like to invite Bapak Douglas Midland to explain how DFC partnerships can finance solutions to critical challenges across sectors, including energy, healthcare, critical infrastructure, and technology. And we'll also highlight DFC's investments in small businesses and women entrepreneurs in order to create jobs in emerging markets. Bapak Douglas, the time is yours. Please give applause to Bapak Douglas.
Well, selamat pagi, salam sehat, greetings and welcome. Thank you to Bapenas, thank you to USAID for, and well, everybody that was involved in bringing this event together and organizing it. It really is a true pleasure to be up here in front of all of you, participating in a G20 side event here in Indonesia, and to represent my agency, the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. So thank you. My name is Douglas Midland, as introduced. I'm the Regional Managing Director for the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, or DFC for short. We do like acronyms. A little bit on who we are and how we came about. The DFC is relatively new. We were officially created in 2020. However, that is built on long-term and hard work of two separate U.S. government agencies. One, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, OPIC, and the Development Credit Authority, which was under USAID. And so that team and the OPIC team really were merged to create the new government agency, the DFC, in 2020. So it really is kind of a combination of efforts, a merger of skill sets, and an existing portfolio of a lot of developmental work globally. Think of the DFC as the US government's development bank. So we partner with and support private sector investment that is addressing a key developmental challenge for the host country, in this case, Indonesia. We are opportunistic at the end of the day, or demand-driven. And I say that just because if a project is majority private sector owned, is addressing a key developmental challenge where there's a gap in the market, and it is being developed in a way that addresses, and incorporates high standards for environmental and social impact, it is well worth a discussion. It doesn't have to fit neatly into any one category. We find some really unique opportunities and are supporting really unique opportunities here in Indonesia. To help, really my job at the end of the day, to focus our business development and origination work, we really do focus on these 6 key categories, which are fairly broad in nature, but I can elaborate a little bit. Energy, we do a lot of work. In fact, a quarter of our global portfolio is in the energy space, with a focus on renewable energy and transitioning towards cleaner forms of power generation. But that can be utility scale power projects, so on-grid or off-grid. And it can be both direct funding for a specific project, or it can actually be a scaling facility supporting the development of a portfolio of projects. We focus on critical infrastructure, that is primarily in the transportation and logistics space, so roads, seaports, airports, the types of projects that help bring down costs for logistics and ultimately for the businesses that rely on those logistics. I'm going to circle back to healthcare because I think it's the most relevant for today's conversation. But food security and agribusiness is another major effort and priority for the agency. This is everything from increasing agricultural production or the food supply to how to get product to market faster and more affordably, so reducing costs that ultimately deliver greater profitability, greater price transparency for underlying farmers or fishers. Technology, this is everything from building the backbone of technology, so expanding fiber or telecommunications and the network, right, that tech platforms rely on to build access to specific markets or opportunities for small and medium-sized enterprises. It can also be the tech platforms themselves, right? So it can be the infrastructure or it can be really support to an individual company and entrepreneur. And importantly, financial inclusion is very important for the agency writ large. This is particularly a focus on economically marginalized communities through the 2X initiative, a strong focus on how we are supporting women-owned, women-led businesses, or businesses that cater primarily to women in the effort to facilitate and progress gender equality. And circling back to healthcare, the USDFC has what's called the Health and Prosperity Initiative, which was really launched in early 2020 in reaction to the ongoing pandemic and a very real recognition that globally healthcare systems are not resilient and face significant challenges that's not tied to any one country, as we've all learned. So the DFC put out an initiative committing $2 billion of our own capital that is meant to facilitate another $3 billion in private investment towards projects that help build resiliency in the healthcare system. And I mention that largely because water, sanitation, health, waste management, these are all factors that fold into this initiative. It's not just a focus on building hospitals and clinics or vaccine manufacturing and delivery. It is a very broad sector and very nuanced, so relevant to today's conversation. So how do we fulfill our mandate and deliver on some of these objectives in these sectors? It's really through our financing tools. And with today's conversation focused on blended finance, right, the strategic use of different forms of capital to really de-risk or reallocate the risks in a project that is best suited for a particular tranche of capital, we have a number of things that we can work with. And that starts with our ability to provide patient capital through the form of debt financing. That can be a direct loan to a company or a project, or it can be an investment guarantee, loan portfolio guarantee that helps bring down the overall cost of capital by crowding in different forms of commercial and philanthropic capital. One key aspect of our debt financing, as you can see up on the screen, wide range in terms of what we're able to provide. So we generally do not have a lower limit. Lower limits are really generated, I would say, by the transaction costs and the economics of the project at hand. But we are able to go fairly large, up to $1 billion per transaction. You can think of only one transaction where we've gone that large, and it actually is in the healthcare space and fits in the blended finance category, where we provided up to $1 billion of commitment to the Gavi Alliance for vaccine manufacturing, and that was really unlocked through reciprocal donor commitments to the alliance. Political risk insurance, this is available to foreign enterprises that are entering a new market and have the capacity and the ability to assess the commercial risks of a transaction or a project, less familiar with assessing some of the risks that are inherent in entering a new market. So that is coverage available to protect against losses associated with inconvertibility of local currency into hard currency. It's political violence, it's expropriation, and like I said, is available to foreign enterprises. DFC has a new capability in the form of equity investment. And this is an area where we are, I would say, treading carefully, but very excited to have this newfound capability, and really unlocks and opens up a wide variety of us to participate throughout the capital structure in a project. We're able to participate in equity both as a traditional LP investor in a fund, so alongside other LPs in a fund that is focused on with an investment strategy that addresses similar objectives of those of the DFC. We're also able to do direct equity investments into companies themselves. And it's worth highlighting, we're not at this stage seed or venture capital. We see our role primarily as investing in growth stage companies that have identified a business model and need additional capital to further develop products, systems, and further growth and scalability. And then another key tool that is new with the DFC is our own form of technical assistance grant funding, not meant to be redundant or repetitive in terms of what is available across other U.S. government agencies, including USAID, the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. This is not a standalone product. So in other words, it's really meant to partner with other forms of DFC participation to facilitate investment, whether it's debt financing or equity investment. And its ultimate objective is really to accelerate the timeline to development and implementation of a project, or improve the probability of success in implementing a project, or to deepen the developmental impact. So where DFC is already participating in a transaction or is interested in supporting a project, we can provide this funding to provide technical assistance in the form of training, or clarify some of the environmental and social impacts and how we can mitigate some of those impacts. So largely what's captured in an environmental and social impact assessment, we can help cover those costs. So in other words, position a project for DFC financing and to access that capital. I won't spend too much time on the next couple of slides, but I thought it would be helpful just to at least give a quick snapshot of what our own process is. The question often comes up, how do we access DFC capital? A lot of the upfront identification work is now done on the ground here in Indonesia, largely through me and collaborative efforts with me and my colleagues. In terms of sourcing, pre-screening a transaction, working with the project company to identify a financing structure that aligns with DFC's capabilities and requirements. And at that point, bringing on additional resources from our office in Washington, D.C. to help then underwrite and structure the loan itself and take it through our approval process. But another key component in terms of DFC's ongoing work is our monitoring, right? So it's not kind of job well done, right, after the capital is out the door, but how are we continuing to stay in touch with our ultimate borrowers or our partners to ensure that the objectives that we set out on are ultimately achieved, or if not achieved, how can we work together to change things, right? What is the feedback loop or knowledge that we are taking on board through our monitoring process so that we can do better, right, as we continue to support other projects involved in that space? And lastly, some preliminary screening questions that we typically ask when we're looking at a new project for DFC financing. A key component, obviously, is it commercially viable? And while, particularly in the blended finance category, we can work with other forms of capital to think through how do we get to the lowest cost of capital possible to help support the financial and operational sustainability of the project. It still needs to stand on its own two legs as a business at the end of the day. And so that is a key criteria that we are looking at, is what is the long-term business plan? Ensuring that what is needed is ultimately what we can deliver in terms of our financing products. I touched on environmental and social impact. We underwrite to IFC performance standards. That is a fairly robust review of the environmental and social impact, but also worker rights and safety. And with that comes cost and time. And so again, that's one area where DFC's TA grant funding can be supportive in a transaction, is really doing that upfront work that I think is part of the de-risking process itself, right? It's not just, I want to be very clear, like the underwriting to high standards on environmental and social is not just, asking for the time, capital, and commitment, right, to identifying risk. It is ultimately the community engagement and in the identifying risks that ultimately impact the long-term credit and operations of the business. So it is kind of doing upfront work that really help de-risk the project itself. And what is the track record of the business owner, or what kind of partnerships are being brought on board to improve the probability of success of the project, right? So what's the business strategy or investment strategy at the end of the day? So with that, I think I'll turn it on to the next presenter, but thanks again for including me and taking the time to join us and listen, learn a little bit about DFC, and look forward to continuing to engage with you all through the remainder of the morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bapak Douglas, for a great and fruitful presentation. Next, we invite Bapak Armando Marulitua to share how PT SME operates a spatial mission vehicle under Indonesia's Ministry of Finance to mobilize funding for infrastructure projects. And we'll also discuss how PT SME contributes to develop goals such as poverty alleviation, increased availability of access to cleanliness or sanitation, health, education, and technology, and the achievement of the SDGs in Indonesia. Bapak Armando, the floor is yours. Please give applause to Bapak Armando.
Dear Honorable Mr. Cohen from USAID Indonesia, and distinguished speakers, panelists, local government representative, selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And for the next 10 minutes, I hope I will try to share about blended finance implementation in PT SMI and how we mobilize the capital through the blended finance. And later on these presentations, I would like to share also about the showcase of the projects that utilize blended finance that we have been doing so far. As previous presenters have been said that we have a financing gap between our investment targets and the funding that has been national budget funding. So blended finance is tools or hopefully can bridging the gap between the financing needs and the investment targets. And blended finance, we believe, can offer solutions to offer consultations for projects, development, to improve projects' qualities and readiness. Also, blended finance can be defined to be of various kinds of types, and also use of various sources of funds from various stakeholders to de-risk the projects and increase bankability of the projects, and also synergy and collaborations with relevant stakeholders and strategic partners. This include philanthropists and other international agency institutions. And we have a platform to package the blended finance that we call SDG Indonesia 1. And In this platform, we have categorized 4 facilities ranging for SDG development facilities, SDG de-risking facilities, SDG financing facilities, and SDG equity fund. And we are happy to tell that until July 2022, in this platform, we have received the 3.27 billion USD commitment from 35 partners. As I've mentioned before, the concept of SDG Indonesia 1 is to support business, and that can be implementation of concessional loan in the form of bilateral loan or multilateral loan, and then business and product development, donor matching for pipeline development, technical assistance, support to increase the readiness of the project. And we also targeting the leveraging impact of the scheme is to cooperation with donor philanthropists to scaling up the impact with co-granting schemes, cooperation with other development facilities, financing associations such as IDFC, ABPN, IDFIIP, and IDFMI. And the output of this platform, and until now, we have make the blended finance projects. We involve in 57 projects that include 50 project developments and 7 project financing. And also we have also do the 46 activities, including the sharing sessions and that related to SDG goals. And fund mobilizations, as I've mentioned, we have already secured 3.2 billion US dollars commitment from our 35 partners, and the amount of disbursements is around 230 millions that have been disbursed to the projects. And on the left side of the slides is all the partners that have been partnering with PTSMI. On the SDG development facilities, we have some names like ADB, KFW, IGES, AIIB, and others international institutions. And for the SDG de-risking facilities, we have Canada and foreign companies and development office. Also on the SDG financing facilities, we are partnering with private banks and private financial institutions to enable to mobilize the capital to the project. So basically, this is the products from the SDG platform that I've mentioned. We are categorize the types of SDG blended finance, and we create products on these particular subsections of SDG, such as on the development, we have grant for feasibility studies and technical assistance. In the risking facilities, we also have credit enhancement, and this is also will be the showcase on the later presentations. And the financing, we have financing facilities that have wide ranging of products from commercial investment financing and also junior financing or sub-debt. We also can provide equity investment to the projects. This is the flexibility of PTSMI. Now, entering the showcase of the project, the first project that I would like to share to all of you is the collaborations between PTSMI and Climate Works Foundations. So basically, this is technical the grant that Climate Foundation get from philanthropists, that we are planning to distribute the grant to renewable projects under Pertamina Power Indonesia. This project is basically a solar power plant development. Now now in the phase of the project is still in feasibility studies and preparations, and we believe that we and Pertamina have an understanding that in this project we can contribute for climate changes and clean energy, because the project is basically the concept of business model is that the owner of the building, which is Pertamina, will rent the solar power plant and facilities provided by its subsidiaries, PTPPI, in accordance with the lease agreement. So they will install the solar panel in their building, and the tenants will have to rent. And the second showcase is the collaborations between PTSMI and USAID in the form of feasibility studies and capacity building. The scope of work is provide technical assistance to SDG Development Fund in supporting SDG Indonesia 1. The scope cooperation, USAID CNR provides technical assistance for legal support in supporting renewable energy and energy efficiency project transactions in Indonesia. The deliverables, legal support for geothermal projects in East Java, as capacity building for PT SMA, solar PV rooftop and street lighting projects, and the last to support the legal aspect of regulation on energy transition mechanism. Another showcase of a blended finance structure in geothermal sectors. This scheme is to de-risk the exploration stage of financing, exploration stage of geothermal development. In the form of GRAM, or Global Resource Risk Mitigations, that we are channeling to project geothermal in Nusa Tenggara Timur with the capacity of 30 megawatt, and the amount of drilling cost is 30.3 million. With this GRAM, we help the projects to reduce its risk. This is an example of blended finance and collaboration between PTSMI, the World Bank, and AIIB to develop a regional hospital. So basically, AIIB and the World Bank provide funds to PTSMI, and PTSMI channel these funds to their local government or municipal government, because we have divisions that give loan to the municipal governments. So we can see here we have some mix of source of funding to the projects, and to build this hospital we have like some modalities like from grant from AIIB, and also PTSMI also give loan to the municipal from its capital, and the government also have self-funding from the APBD, DAK and DAU. So we can see in this case, we have combined like 5 sources of funds in these projects to build regional hospitals. And then until PTSMI has committed to support clean energy and reduce greenhouse gas. So in 2021, we and the private bank, we create a collaborations to finance renewable energy company, Mini Hydro, with a 100 megawatt capacity. This is to show that we are committed to clean energy project. In addition to that scheme, we also provide credit enhancement facility to the company. So the story is we give the facility to the company so the company can issue bonds to the capital market, and they succeed to raise funds from the capital market. And with our facility, they are able to enhance their credit ratings from A- to AAA. And that's pretty a good case that we can offer to reduce risk, financial risk. I think that's all from my presentations. Thank you. I hope that this presentation can give some pictures of what PT SME has been doing to support the blended finance and support the SDG targeting projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bapak Armando, for a wonderful and fruitful presentation. On to the next agenda, we invite Bapak Ide Bagus Alit Wiridana to share Denpasar's experience in using blended finance to improve solid waste management services. In particular, he will also highlight the example of how third-party financing was used to construct 3 new materials recovery facilities, atau tempat pengelolaan sampah terpadu, or TPST, with refuse-derived fuel, or RDF technology. Bapak Ide Bagus, the time is yours.
Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Salam kebajikan. Rahayu, rahayu, rahayu. Yang kami hormati Ibu Pipi Yuliaswati, beliau staf ahli Menteri Bidang Sosial dan Penanggulangan Kemiskinan Bappenas. Direktur USAID Indonesia, Mr. Jeff Cohen. Ya. Tadi saya terkejut, Pak. Saya duduk di samping beliau, mirip seperti tetangga saya. Kebetulan juga tetangga saya tinggal di Sanur. Jadi mirip sekali. Ya, kemarin kita ketemu kok sudah di sini. Ya. Yang kami hormati para narasumber yang tadi sudah luar biasa menyampaikan berkaitan dengan program kedepannya, dan seluruh peserta seminar, baik melalui online maupun offline. Pada kesempatan ini saya menyampaikan rasa bangga yang luar biasa. Pemerintah Kota Denpasar diberikan kesempatan untuk tampil, ya, diberikan ruang dan waktu untuk menyampaikan berbagai program-program, khususnya kami di Denpasar. Ya, kebetulan kami bersama Bapak Wali Kota, Bapak Wakil Wali Kota bermimpi bagaimana mewujudkan Denpasar yang bebas dari sampah, zero waste ini. Begitu mimpi kami. Ya. Pola-pola yang sudah kita lakukan membangun inovasi itu cukup berat, tantangan cukup berat. Permasalahan sampah di Kota Denpasar puluhan tahun belum bisa kami kendalikan, belum bisa kami tangani. Ya. Lagi-lagi kita menghadapi G20. Nah, perlu ada terobosan-terobosan, dukungan-dukungan, baik dari pemerintah, termasuk juga pemerintah pusat, masyarakat khususnya, dan stakeholder, dan seluruh komponen masyarakat, elemen masyarakat. syukur tahun ini ya kami menyampaikan apresiasi kepada Kementerian Bappenas, Kementerian PUPR, Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan, dan termasuk juga World Bank dan stakeholder lainnya yang sudah membantu mencari jalan ataupun solusi di Kota Denpasar, membangun dari hulu dan dari hilir. Jadi dari hulunya kita sudah membangun TPS 3R, hilirnya kita bangun TPST, tempat pengolahan sampah terpadu di Kota Denpasar. Pola inilah mudah-mudahan bisa menyelesaikan ya permasalahan sampah di Kota Denpasar. Kemudian proses ini sudah belum tentu ya tidak segampang kita membalikkan telapak tangan itu menyelesaikan permasalahan ini. Kita perlu lakukan tahapan-tahapan, step by step itu. Apa yang kita lakukan di bawah? Pertama, kita bangun sosialisasi, edukasi kepada masyarakat. Ya, paham dan pentingnya bagaimana pengolahan sampah itu kita laksanakan mulai dari rumah tangga, mulai dari keluarga itu sendiri. Ya, jadi pengolahan sampah berbasis ya, lingkungan, berbasis sumbernya. Ya, masyarakat, ya, kita edukasi, memahami betapa pentingnya sebenarnya kalau sampah itu dikelola. Jadi sampah itu bukan musuh, tapi sampah itu akan bisa menghasilkan, ya, baik secara ekonomis maupun juga bisa digunakan, dimanfaatkan untuk hal-hal yang lain itu, ya, baik itu untuk energi, ya, untuk listrik dan sebagainya. Mungkin ke sana kita arahkan itu. Kemudian sudah belum tentu pembangunan TPST di Kota Denpasar ini kan hal yang baru. Mohon maaf ini. Ya, kita perlu juga adanya penguatan regulasi. Karena kita menggunakan anggaran berkaitan dengan masalah operasionalnya. Ya, anggaran ini tidak sedikit melalui APBD. Pengolahan anggaran ini harus partisipatif, transparan, akuntabel. Nah, untuk mencapai itulah kami harus duduk bersama, melakukan konsultasi dan koordinasi, baik melalui BPK maupun LKPP. Dan sudah belum tentulah kami mendapat pendampingan. Proses mulai dari lelang sampai dengan pelaksanaan finishing, apakah itu nantinya siapa jadi pemenang, sudah belum tentulah ini bagian yang terpenting. Dan juga syukur pembangunan TPSE yang dilaksanakan oleh Kementerian PUPR sudah berjalan dengan baik. Yang mudah-mudahan tidak ada hambatan. Ya, itu 3 wilayah bertempat di Suung, Batan, Kendal. Jadi tempat itu memang sebelumnya adalah TPA Suung, ya, tempat pembuangan akhir. Kemudian termasuk di Padang Sambian Kajo dan di Kesiman Ketalangu. Karena bagaimanapun Kota Denpasar kan kota metropolitan, ya, sebagai pusat pemerintahan Provinsi Bali, pusat perdagangan, pusat ekonomi, pusat pariwisata, termasuk pusat budaya dan sebagainya. Sehingga kita ketahui, ya, dengan ibu kota provinsi, sehingga tingkat mobilitas termasuk urbanisasi di Kota Denpasar cukup tinggi. Ini permasalahan itu. Nah, permasalahan sosial termasuk juga masalah lainnya. Lagi kita menjelang menyongsong G20, sudah belum tentu kita duduk bersama, gayung bersambut, mari kita selesaikan permasalahan sampah ini. Mulai dari diri kita sendiri, sampai seluruhnya, termasuk juga di tingkat desa, banjar, dan di tingkat kabupaten kota itu. Nah, TPST mudah-mudahan akan menyelesaikan permasalahan sampah itu. Ya, kita sedang berproses, ya. Dan kita yang terpenting bagaimana masyarakat itu ya mengetahui dan memahami ya sampah itu bisa diolah, ya, baik ya menjadikan atau ekonomi keluarganya maupun juga menjadi energi atau listrik. Nah, kita harapkan mudah-mudahan TPST ini akan memberikan peluang besar terhadap kemajuan Kota Denpasar. Sehingga permasalahan sampah bisa kita atasi. Pola-pola inilah kita lakukan. Kita di Denpasar ada 21 TPS 3R dan 1 TPST. Kemudian kita bangun 3 TPST. Dan kita ketahui volume sampah di Kota Denpasar ya, hampir 826 sampai 1020 ton per hari itu. Itu tinggi sekali. Sedangkan kita bangun 21 TPS 3R, 1 TPST, ya, yang sudah ada itu bisa menyerap 126 ton per hari. Berarti sisa 700 ton sampah, ya inilah yang sementara kita buang di TPA Suwung. Dan TPA Suwung ini sekarang sudah overload ya. Dan itu pun juga berada di tengah-tengah jantung Kota Denpasar. Tempatnya di tempat-tempat strategis, terutama di kawasan di pariwisata, dan ini juga akan menjadi masalah. Tapi dengan dibangunnya TPST, maka akan menyelesaikan masalah. Karena sampah itu tidak dibuang begitu saja, tapi diolah. Ya mudah-mudahan nanti diolah menjadi energi atau listrik. Dan kita bisa menangani dan menyelesaikan permasalahan lingkungan di Kota Denpasar. Dan tetap kami bermimpi membangun inovasi-inovasi, semoga Denpasar di tahun 2003-2024 Denpasar bebas sampah, zero waste. Jadi demikian yang dapat kami sampaikan. Terima kasih sekali lagi. Yang mudah-mudahan jadi pertemuan ini akan memberikan arti mana yang sangat penting. Terutama kami di Denpasar, permasalahan tidak pernah henti-hentinya permasalahan sampah yang bisa kita atasi secara bersama-sama. Dan kita lihat bagaimana pembangunan TPST di 3 wilayah itu, baik di Suwung Batar Kendal, di Padang Sambian Kaje, dan termasuk di Kesiman Ketelangu. Dan permasalahan dengan masyarakat yang sering juga ribut karena sampah, kalau sudah bicara sampah pasti semua akan takut itu sampah ya, memberikan kondisi menjadi bau dan sebagainya. Tapi syukur kami didukung oleh masyarakat di Denpasar ya. Pembangunan TPS 3T di 3 tempat itu sudah berjalan dengan baik. Proses edukasi, sosialisasi, walaupun awalnya kami menghadapi juga tantangan cukup berat ya, karena masyarakat di sana ya cukup banyak juga, ada 400 masyarakat ya yang masih tinggal di sana, dan dengan pendekatan baik pendekatan secara persuasif, karena kami punya pengalaman ya, kebetulan juga saya pernah jadi lurah, saya pernah jadi camat, saya pernah jadi kepala satuan polisi Pamong Praja, saya pernah juga menjadi kades pemberdayaan masyarakat. Jadi ilmu itulah kami satukan, bisa kami selesaikan, kami turun langsung untuk menyelesaikan permasalahan-permasalahan yang ada terutama di tempat rencana pembangunan TPST, baik di Suwung, Batang Kendal, maupun juga di Padang Sambian, termasuk juga di Kesiman Ketelangu. Astungkaro, syukur proses berjalan dengan kondusif, tidak terjadi permasalahan. Yang mudah-mudahan ke depan ini masyarakat kami di Denpasar mendukung sepenuhnya bagaimana menyelesaikan permasalahan lingkungan ini dengan baik, sampah bisa diatasi, sampah menjadi nilai produktif, baik secara ekonomis maupun juga secara sosial. Jadi demikian, terima kasih. Saya akhiri dengan Promo Santi. Om Santi, Santi, Santi. Om, sukses.
Thank you so much, Bapak Ide Bagus, for the presentation. And for all the speakers, I would like to say thank you for a wonderful and fruitful panel presentation. Before we start our next session, we will have a 10-minute break that will be accompanied by a short video on blended finance. We provide a coffee break for offline participants in the short break. Please highlight that we just have 10 minutes, and 2 minutes before we're going to start next session, I will give the announcement. So have a break time.
The rising tide of ocean plastic pollution is creating a challenge for the world's environment. and for the millions of people who depend on the ocean for their livelihoods. The most pressing challenge comes from rapidly growing cities in the developing world. There, surging populations, poor infrastructure, and rising incomes contribute to more discarded plastic than local waste management systems can handle. This mismanaged waste gets into waterways and eventually the ocean. USAID is leading the U.S. government's response to this urgent challenge in developing countries through partnerships and programs like our flagship Clean Cities Blue Ocean program. We are working to improve solid waste management and expand the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. We work with local and national governments, waste collectors, civil society groups, and businesses. We strengthen the efficiency and the financial sustainability of the entire waste management system. We protect and empower vulnerable waste workers. How do we do this? Through technical assistance to local governments, grants to local organizations, and new partnerships with key groups like schools, women's organizations, and youth groups to promote behavior change towards the 3 R's. Together, we can turn the tide on ocean plastic pollution.
Sepertiga dari makanan yang diproduksi untuk konsumsi manusia hilang atau terbuang antara proses panen dan proses konsumsi. Sedangkan di Indonesia, pada tahun 2018, timbulan sampah yang paling dominan sebanyak 44% adalah sampah makanan. Sebagai negara yang turut serta menyepakati agenda pembangunan global, Indonesia telah berkomitmen untuk mengimplementasikan tujuan pembangunan berkelanjutan. Salah satunya adalah konsumsi dan produksi yang bertanggung jawab. Dalam RPJMN 2020-2024, pembangunan rendah karbon memprioritaskan implementasi penanganan limbah dan ekonomi sirkular untuk mencapai tujuan tersebut. Namun, pada tahun 2017, The Economist Intelligence Unit menyatakan bahwa Indonesia adalah penghasil food loss and waste kedua terbesar di dunia. Pada tahun 2020, Kementerian PPN Bappenas bersama dengan World Resources Institute dan Waste for Change didukung oleh UK FCDO melaksanakan kajian food loss and waste yang bertujuan untuk mengetahui data dasar atau baseline dan proyeksi food loss and waste di Indonesia. Di samping itu juga untuk mengidentifikasi strategi pengelolaan food loss and waste untuk mendukung implementasi pembangunan rendah karbon dan ekonomi sirkular. Kajian ini terdiri dari 4 fase yang dilakukan selama 8 bulan. Data dikumpulkan dari stakeholder meeting, wawancara ahli dan praktisi, survei pengukuran timbulan sampah makanan, serta survei kuesioner. Dalam kajian ini, yang dimaksud food loss adalah hilangnya sejumlah pangan pada tahapan produksi, pasca panen dan penyimpanan, serta pemrosesan dan pengemasan. Food waste adalah pangan yang dibuang pada tahap distribusi dan retail serta konsumsi. Dari hasil kajian, food loss and waste di Indonesia selama 20 tahun berada di rentang 23 sampai 48 juta ton per tahun atau setara dengan 115 sampai 184 kilogram per kapita per tahun. Kerugian ekonomi akibat food loss and waste selama 20 tahun terakhir setara dengan 4-5% produk domestik bruto Indonesia, yaitu sekitar 213 hingga 551 triliun rupiah per tahun. Dari 11 jenis pangan yang ada, sayur-sayuran menjadi pangan yang pengelolaannya paling tidak efisien. Sementara padi-padian adalah pangan yang menimbulkan kerugian ekonomi paling besar. Dalam 20 tahun terakhir, kandungan energi yang hilang dari food loss and waste setara dengan porsi makanan 61 sampai 125 juta orang per tahun. Sementara dari sisi emisi gas rumah kaca, food loss and waste selama 20 tahun di Indonesia mengeluarkan emisi sebesar 1.702,9 megaton karbon dioksida ekuivalen, setara dengan luas Pulau Jawa dan NTB jika ditanami pohon. Dari hasil studi, ditemukan terdapat berbagai faktor penyebab food loss and waste. 3 penyebab utama yaitu kurangnya implementasi good handling practice, kualitas ruang penyimpanan yang kurang optimal, dan kelebihan porsi serta perilaku konsumen. Hasil kajian juga membuktikan terdapat tren peningkatan food loss and waste setiap tahunnya dengan rata-rata peningkatan sebesar 3,19% per tahun. Sangat penting bagi kita untuk segera menerapkan strategi pengelolaan food loss and waste di Indonesia. Berdasarkan hasil kajian, dirumuskan 5 arah kebijakan strategi pengelolaan food loss and waste di Indonesia. Yang pertama, perubahan perilaku. Pembenahan penunjang sistem pangan. Penguatan regulasi dan optimalisasi pendanaan. Pemanfaatan food loss and waste. Dan pengembangan kajian dan pendataan food loss and waste. Strategi ini diharapkan untuk dapat diterapkan dalam 25 tahun ke depan hingga 2045. Perilaku kita dalam menghabiskan makanan akan sangat berpengaruh mengurangi dampak food loss and waste. Mari lebih bertanggung jawab terhadap konsumsi dan produksi makanan untuk masa depan Indonesia yang lebih lestari, sehat, dan rendah karbon.
Plastik adalah bahan unik yang selalu kita gunakan dalam kehidupan sehari-hari. Dari minuman kemasan sampai komponen elektronik. Plastik adalah cara kita memindahkan makanan dan produk di seluruh dunia. Tapi, setelah digunakan selama puluhan tahun, bahan hebat ini telah menjadi salah satu ancaman terbesar planet bumi. Plastik tak hanya berdampak pada lingkungan, tetapi juga tubuh kita. Sekarang, kita perlu memutuskan untuk menggunakan plastik dengan lebih bijak atau melihat anak cucu kita tersiksa akibat kelalaian kita.
Alasan yang membuat plastik ideal, yakni murah, dapat diandalkan, dan tahan lama, seharusnya menjadi keuntungan. Tapi, semua itulah yang menjadikan plastik ancaman.
Ladies and gentlemen, your time for the break time is 2 minutes left. You can take your food and bring it inside if you're not finished yet. To remind you again, your break time is 2 minutes left. Thank you.
Pusat kota dibuang. Masalahnya, perlu waktu ratusan tahun untuk mengurai plastik. Jadi, kita bisa menemukan sampah yang sudah ada sejak pertama kali kita menggunakan plastik. Menurut beberapa penelitian, jumlah plastik di TPA mencapai 6,4 miliar ton. Kapal kontainer besar ini bagaikan kota terapung. Tapi, dibutuhkan 41.000 kapal macam ini untuk menyamai berat sampah plastik di seluruh dunia. Apa yang terjadi jika plastik tidak terbuang ke TPA? Banyak yang akhirnya terbuang ke sini.
Ini adalah lokasi menyelam di Tulamben, di lepas pantai Bali. Atraksi populer di kalangan wisatawan yang sekarang menjadi seperti ini. Ikan-ikan berenang melewati lautan sampah.
Yang menyedihkan, itu bukan bagian terburuknya.
Ini adalah pulau sampah di Laut Karibia. Di Samudra Pasifik, pulau-pulau sampahnya lebih besar lagi. Kita mungkin tak melihatnya setiap hari, tapi pulau-pulau ini nyata.
Semua plastik ini akhirnya terurai, tapi tidak akan hilang. Partikel-partikel plastik dimakan organisme terkecil di lautan. Kemudian, mereka dimakan oleh organisme yang lebih besar. Lalu, yang lebih besar lagi. Sampai akhirnya, plastik ada di ikan yang kita makan dan berakhir di perut kita.
Ladies and gentlemen, your time is almost up, and I would like to invite all the guests that's still outside the room to get in, because we are going to start in several minutes. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, your break time is almost up, so I please all of the guests to get into the room because we are going to start several minutes from now. Thank you.
The rising tide of ocean plastic pollution is creating a challenge for the world's environment and for the millions of people who depend on the ocean for their livelihoods. The most pressing challenge comes from rapidly growing cities in the developing world. There, surging populations, poor infrastructure, and rising incomes contribute to more discarded plastic than local waste management systems can handle. This mismanaged waste gets into waterways and eventually the ocean. USAID is leading the U.S. government's response to this urgent challenge in developing countries. Through partnerships and programs, like our flagship Clean Cities, Blue Ocean program, we are working to improve solid waste management and expand the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. We work with local and national governments, waste collectors, civil society groups, and businesses. We strengthen the efficiency and the financial sustainability of the entire waste management system. We protect and empower vulnerable waste workers. How do we do this? Through technical assistance to local governments, grants to local organizations, and new partnerships with key groups like schools, women's organizations, and youth groups to promote behavior change towards the 3 R's. Together, we can turn the tide on ocean plastic pollution.
Sepertiga dari makanan yang diproduksi untuk konsumsi manusia hilang atau terbuang antara proses panen dan proses konsumsi. Sepertiga dari makanan yang diproduksi untuk konsumsi manusia hilang atau terbuang antara proses panen dan proses konsumsi. Sedangkan di Indonesia, pada tahun 2018, timbulan sampah yang paling dominan sebanyak 44% adalah sampah makanan. Sebagai negara yang turut serta menyepakati agenda pembangunan global, Indonesia telah berkomitmen untuk mengimplementasikan tujuan pembangunan berkelanjutan. Salah satunya adalah konsumsi dan produksi yang bertanggung jawab. Dalam RPJMN 2020-2024, pembangunan rendah karbon memprioritaskan implementasi penanganan limbah dan ekonomi sirkular untuk mencapai tujuan tersebut. Namun, pada tahun 2017, The Economist Intelligence Unit menyatakan bahwa Indonesia adalah penghasil food loss and waste kedua terbesar di dunia. Pada tahun 2020, Kementerian PPN Bappenas bersama dengan World Resources Institute dan Waste for Change didukung oleh UK FCDO melaksanakan kajian food loss and waste yang bertujuan untuk mengetahui data dasar atau baseline dan proyeksi food loss and waste di Indonesia. Di samping itu juga untuk mengidentifikasi strategi pengelolaan food loss and waste untuk mendukung implementasi pembangunan rendah karbon dan ekonomi sirkular. Kajian ini terdiri dari 4 fase yang dilakukan selama 8 bulan. Data dikumpulkan dari stakeholder meeting, wawancara ahli dan praktisi.
Announcement for all of the guests that still outside the room. I invite you to come into the room because we are going to start in several minutes. For all the guests that still stay outside the room, I'd invite all of the guests to get into the room because we have to start in several minutes. You may bring your food inside of this room.
Sampai 48 juta ton per tahun atau setara dengan 115 sampai 180.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may have a seat, and we are going to start on to our next session, which is a panel discussion about blended finance to combat ocean plastic pollution. This session will be moderated by Bapak Douglas Midland, U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. We invite Bapak Douglas to the stage.
Sorry, just getting settled here. Hello, everybody. Thank you. As you're getting back to your seats, starting the next session in terms of the panel discussion, very much looking forward to this opportunity, the chance for us to all hear from those actually working on the ground and delivering on a lot of the opportunities that we've been learning about in this morning's session. So I guess in order, I'd like to introduce to the stage first Ms. Regula Sheg from Circulate Capital. Ms. Nurdiana Darus, Head of Corporate Affairs and Sustainability at Unilever Indonesia. Mr. Daniel Law, from Prevented Ocean Plastic Southeast Asia, or POPSI. Mr. Bima Aris Dianto, CEO and founder of PT Reciki Solusia Indonesia. And Ms. Tina Gunawan, the country director for USAID's Clean Cities Blue Ocean Indonesia, CCDO. Thank you very much. All right, well, thank you. And, you know, not everybody up on the stage has had the opportunity to really introduce themselves. So I thought it would be worthwhile to just start off with maybe work from a high level and then focus a little bit more on some of the businesses that are operating in this space. And so with that, just maybe a quick question, a high-level question to all of the participants, if you don't mind, just kind of running down the line. Maybe we can start with Butina at the end there. But you're all ultimately invested in this space, right? Whether it's through capital, whether it's through time and resources, CapEx. Really just interested to hear from each of you, what's the investment strategy? Why are we here, right? And ultimately, what is your key objective at the end of the day?
There, it works. Thanks, Doug, for the questions. Clean City Blue Oceans, like its title, our objective is to prevent plastic that wasted through the environment, to prevent that so that it's not going to the oceans. That's the Clean Cities Blue Oceans. I mean, it's a very, very clear. We have an integrated approach covering all from the upstream to the downstream, helping changing the behavior through the social behavior change for reducing, reusing, and recycling, and also providing market, linking them to market for the 3 Rs. And the second, not the second, I mean the other approach is for increasing the capacity to governments and all the stakeholders in the space for, and also to strengthen the governance of the solid waste management. The third one is for enabling environment, building the enabling environment, policy, finance, technical, like for example, increasing the rate of transportation from one point to another of the waste, so as part of the waste management. Of course, we cannot work by ourselves. We work with partners, the private sector, universities, local government, because we are supporting them. Our mandate is to support the local government at the municipal level for the better solid waste management. And of course, the cross-cutting and I think, because I'm also the woman, it's the most important aspect in the solid waste management, especially in Indonesia, is women empowerment. The women empowerment for waste economy. Waste economy is a new term for us, so that's the role of women in the waste economy is really strong here in Indonesia, especially but at the same time, their contribution is undervalued. That's why it's important for us, CCBO, using that gender aspect as a cross-cutting issue towards the 5 approach of CCBO. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think it's okay. As a Resiki goals to prevent plastic from the ocean and also bring the solution for the waste problem in Indonesia, it's actually based on 3 problems. First, we understand that waste are collected and recycled still 16.66%. 50.33% are going to the landfill and 33% are going nowhere. It can be burned, going to the ocean, and etc. And the second, we understand that mostly are the landfill, it's already over capacity. And the third, expanding the landfill, it's not an easy issue. It's not like 10 years ago, it's quite easy. Gaining the community resistance to establish the new landfill, this is the situation is actually happened. But for the 3 challenges, However, this is the challenge can turn into the opportunity. But we have to transform our waste management models into zero waste to landfill. This is not actually a recipe promise. This is not like a vision which is not implemented. It could be implemented. But this is the thing that we have to transform quickly as possible based on these three problems. And also the collaboration with between the government, industrial, also community, it has to be built. Yes, so Resiki, us, prefer to use like a zero waste to landfill models to capture, bring more material into the recycles, and also bring the solution also regarding the landfill situation. So that's why we have a strong, very strong, in three factors. First, we are our ability tailor needs of a government, and also collaboration with the supply chains, and also maximize all the waste are coming into the materials. This is the thing that as we expected. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Pak Daniel, can you speak a little bit on POPSI's investment strategy and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you very much, Dalaj. I would like to use this opportunity to thank you, the Secured Capitals, CCBO, and USAID to sponsoring this event and this creating this opportunity for us. Yeah, in POPSI, based on this name, this is obviously we are trying to prevent plastic from polluting the oceans. And how we prevented it is a key of a long chain of the effort, because first we need to create infrastructures. That's why by the funding of Secured Capital, we are aiming to opening 12 collection centers during these 3 years, with 3 large aggregation centers, mostly out of Java Island. The target of Java Island is to aiming for the low collections plastic area, where there was still lack of infrastructures. So we creating the infrastructures, also creating the integrated system that can be replicated to many areas, as many as we can. That's why the name of POPSI is aiming not just Indonesia, but Southeast Asia. So in order to creating and make the system works, like it or not, we need to think economic-wise, because without injecting the value of the plastic, it's just hard to work. It's just hard to replicate. So that's how we need a support, because if we open collection centers in area that pack of populations, that will be less of challenge. The biggest challenge is where you create when you create a collection centers, we create collection centers in a remote area. Then that will be the challenge, because the logistic cost, the infrastructures, is highly costing the process. So that's how we need the support. Can be any kind of a support, especially financing, but we also need the support of local government, because then the collection centers will connect it to the local government, to the maybe TPS 3R and Bank Sampah, and also the main important partners is the smaller collectors. So we are there to be closer to the source of raw materials, to ease their efforts, and also to inject the additional economic value on the plastic and present it as a good quality product to our end customers, where they need, the demand is there strongly. And for your information, it's not a trial system, this is a proven system. So in our company, Polindo Utama, which we generated all, converted this all plastic waste to be a good product to our customers. We already have the demand. We already have strong connections to the high-end customers. So what we are doing with POPC is to replicate the proven system already, to spread it out to all of Indonesia, and next target is to Southeast Asia country. So we are happy to have this moment, and really looking forward to get more involved in all these events like this. And the last of the things I would like to express my gratefulness is about being in this business is also a very privilege for us, because not just being a businessman, but you also can make a lot of impact on environment and socials, and to help to create jobs, especially for women in the remote area, where we try to train them. We try to give the additional income, especially for housewives usually, and then they can have the second income in the family. Hopefully, it also can be generated to good education for the kids, and etc. Thank you, Dalits.
Well, thank you, Daniel. No, you touched on a lot of themes I think we'll turn back to in terms of the infrastructure, as well as partnerships with local government and other stakeholders, as well as gender equality. So thank you for that introduction. Ibu Ade, do you mind speaking up? Coming from a large multinational, how are you all invested in the space? And you know, I guess what is ultimately your objective, right, from a Unilever's perspective?
Okay, thank you, Doug. So I hope everybody is familiar with Unilever and the products that we sell on a daily basis, and hopefully that everybody also uses on a daily basis. Some of the products are Dove, Sunsilk, Kecap Bango, our gem product, Sariwangi as well. But all these products come to you in a plastic packaging. So naturally, we want to do something to lessen that impact on the environment. Our purpose as Unilever is to make sustainable living commonplace, and this covers not just plastic, but also nutrition, health, and education as well. But for plastic specifically, by 2025, we have a global commitment first to halve the use of our virgin plastic, and ultimately reducing by 100,000 tons of plastics globally. The second is to collect and process more than what we sell in each of our market. The third is to make 100% of our products reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And the fourth commitment is to commit to using 25% of recycled content, recycled resin in our packaging. So these are really bold commitments, and we feel very compelled to really working not just on our own, but with our partners. The partners that we work with are, of course, the government, the subnational governments, the communities, our buyers as well, but also our partners, our suppliers, the aggregators that we work with, but also the scavengers as well. It is not an easy task, I would say, and I think this is why we're all here today as well. And it's also not cheap. And that's why we're all here as well today, because it does need blended financing. And innovation is key, and that's why we are here. That's why we invested in Circle Capital. Of course, Circle Capital now invested in Rechiki and also in POPSI, because we believe in three things. One is innovation. It needs to be blended finance. They need to be helped in de-risks in order for them to be profitable. Otherwise, their innovations are also not sustainable. The second is also to engage our actors in the supply chain, in the value chain, and this ranging from people from the upstream to the downstream, from pemulung, from the scavengers, and also to the recyclers. They need to be invested in this space. They need to be invested in making this work. And the third is about getting all the actors making the change stick. How do we make the change stick? Ibu Tina has programs, Pak Bima, Pak Daniel also. We also have programs. We all aim to instill behavioral change into all the actors. But how do we make that change stick? And that we cannot do without the role of the government in instilling the right regulations, the right policies, but also incentives and disincentives. And if all three aspects we get together, I think we will probably, hopefully, can get some really great progress on the ground. And that's why we want to be part of that solution as well. Doug, thanks.
Thank you very much. And Regula, you had a chance to introduce Circulate Capital already. And so I think we're familiar with your investment strategy at this stage. But historically speaking, it sounds like, right, this is a sector that struggles from just poor economics, whether that's the low prices or low industrial demand for plastics. But that sounds like that's beginning to change, both from Unilever, you mentioned in your opening remarks, the commitment to buying recycled products and utilizing recycled products. Just curious, Circulate Capital is really focused on, it sounds, transforming the plastics recycling value chain. And I was just hoping, could you elaborate on that a little bit and how that factors into your investment strategy?
I hope that sounds now great. So, well, let me maybe just step back for a second. So 11 million metric tons of plastic is leaking into the ocean every year. That's 1.5 garbage trucks every minute. This is happening because we don't have the infrastructure to bring that material back into the circular economy. So the capital which is needed are billions, and we address that. I think what we need to understand is that as an investment firm, we cannot just invest in individual businesses all around Southeast Asia, but we need to really build within cities or within larger metropolitan areas a very systemic approach and an infrastructure which, like puzzle pieces, fit into each other. Meaning, if we look at let's say, Jakarta, we need to understand where is the material produced, where is it consumed, what is the pricing, where does it flow? Is it burned? Is it flowing into the ocean? What happens to it? And once all these parties sitting here, who are key players, understand how they can link into that system, we can actually take capital and really invest in these businesses along the entire supply chain. And I think that's important. We cannot just say we want to invest in more recycling. Recycling can only work if we have better collection infrastructure. And if we have better collection infrastructure in much more economic terms, we can make recycled content in packaging economically viable. So I think this is important when we look at it from a financial perspective. Traditional venture capital or private equity, they invest in the best performing businesses, right? We invest in the supply chain. Some of the businesses are not as high performing, but they can have a tremendous environmental and social impact. Others may have a bit higher performance. At the end of the day, what is most important is that we, as I mentioned, put all these puzzle pieces together to make it a systemic, full circular solution. And here comes the corporate's role, exactly. They have the demand for material, right? So then we need to connect them to the suppliers of the material and bring them together so they start talking. And capital, and our capital is really here to help enable that ecosystem.
Thank you. So, I mean, it sounds like Circulate, a fund will traditionally, look at, like, as you said, the individual best performers and how that comes together as an overall portfolio to achieve certain performance objectives. It sounds like Circulate Capital goes one step further to say, how does the portfolio itself come together and reinforce one another in driving a systemic solution? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Absolutely. Well, we've heard a lot about how policy and the regulatory environment, how critical that is, right, in ultimately delivering that those systemic solutions. And Ibu Tina, I was hoping you all have a unique vantage point, right, because you're both regionally focused as well as working at the municipal level. And I just was wondering, could you maybe elaborate a little bit on is the municipal level the right starting point, right, in terms of driving up these systemic solutions? And how are some of the outcomes of working at the municipal level delivering on a national goal level?
Thank you, Doug. The municipal level work in Indonesia, for example, even though the national government actually give a mandate for the solid waste management to be done at the local level, at municipal level. So the municipal level has a very strategic task in terms of making the solid waste management, in this case as part, where plastic also as part of that, is important for making sure that the target at the national level is achieved. There's a different, like for example, the 5 years development goal stated that it's 80% handled and 20% reduced. That's the target at the national level. But at the same time, this cannot be achieved by the national government if the municipal level government doesn't have any resources, capacity, or one of the resources, capacity, human resources, capacity, and also funding. So, like for example, in Indonesia in general, the budget for the solid waste management is usually it's less than 5% of their city budget. So it's so important, and that's why CCBO invest in that level, because we would like to push the capacity forward, effectiveness of solid waste management up to that level that it can contribute effectively to the national target. And I think that's why we are investing at the municipal level, because that's the important part. I'm sorry, the second question, the follow-up question is?
I think you answered it, which is largely how are you working at the municipal level to ultimately deliver national goals?
At the national goals, yeah.
But maybe a quick follow-up question is just, in terms of implementing, you said an integrated solution, right? Is that primarily work on the policy side, so kind of working with municipalities in terms of what is ultimately required for a successful implementation of an integrated strategy? Or is it capacity building? Can you elaborate a little bit on the specific work that you're doing with the municipal?
The capacity building that we do is related to the anything related to the solid waste management. Like for example, we have developed this solid waste index for local governance capacity. So I'm not so good in the abbreviation. It's skill. We call it skill. So yeah, we have that tools, for example, that actually works with local government, looking into which area of the governance system that contributing to the successful of solid waste management. Then we develop or build the capacity based on that result, that index. That's the theoretical part of that. But at the same time, we also not focusing only on that. We work with the local communities through our grantees, where we build the revamping the TPS 3Rs, how do you say it in English? It's a material recovery facility. And then that's the working with our grantees to actually build a capacity of local community to actually be able and have the needs for them to actually involved in that. And Ibu Ade earlier mentioned about how the change stick. That's what we would like to have. So the continuity, the sustainability aspect to that is we hope that we can change it through the social behavior change. That's important part. Not only social behavior change at the very local level, but we hope someday we can also instill the social behavior change at the corporate level, like Ibu Ade has already had in the system, in their strategy and such. So that's what we are doing, and that's the building capacity based on the local needs.
Yeah. Actually. Thank you for that. Ray, kind of picking up on the piece of the policy and the regulatory environment, coming from a DFI myself, I think we see a role, right, as supporting projects and entrepreneurs operating in a segment where the regulatory environment isn't exactly clear. And I'm just wondering, how does, when you're looking at projects, right, how does the regulatory environment impact your approach and how you work through your companies to help build transparency and clarity, right, in terms of where these companies are maneuvering?
So there are two areas which we've seen in the last years which had quite an impact on how we invest. And one is COVID-driven, whereby in many countries waste management and material recovery and recycling was not part of the core industries during the lockdowns, and that caused tremendous problems, right? And I think that is a key learning that the waste management, material recovery industry and the recycling industry needs to continue in situations of pandemics. But an area which is really important to us is obviously from an SME perspective, a regulatory environment which is supporting SMEs to grow, to take capital in, to enable them to grow and is really helping them to navigate. Another area which is important is that countries and governments start to consider recycled plastic to be used in food contact and food grade. Because you can recycle plastic from, let's say, multi-layer plastic into construction material. But we can also take a PET bottle today and put it back into a PET bottle, full circular food contact. That's the highest quality of recycling, which also is economically really feasible and viable. But for that, the government entities need to set the right regulations into place whereby these countries or these companies can actually use that material in food contact with food contact packaging. And not all countries allow that. And we have made an investment in India, which has now been given the EFSA approval, the European Food Association accreditation, basically, to use that material in food contact packaging. And that has to happen in Asia as well. Because that way, the value of the material goes up and it can be recycled locally, not only taken in and recovered locally, but also put back into packaging locally. And from a greenhouse gas emission perspective, this is perfect. Local solutions for local packaging. But for that, we need the framework to be able to do that. The technology is there. It's not rocket science. The machinery is there. We just need to have the regulatory environment to do it.
Thank you for that. And Daniel, a lot of what POPSI is focused on, well, I guess to take a step back, right? POPSI is receiving support from both Circulate Capital as well as CCBO, right, in terms of building out your own business, which is very focused on identifying the business opportunity in plastic pollution, and was just hoping that you could elaborate on build on what Regula just talked through in terms of the business opportunity, right, and how POPSI is really playing a role, and what you see as the key items of success for ultimately delivering on that.
Yeah, thank you, Daud. I think Regula just addressed it correctly. I think it needs a support, especially from the government itself, because, for example, PET, our core recycling now, most of the plastic is exporting because it's driven by the economic, it's driven by the price. Why is that? It's because first, the establishment of the regulations. In Europe, the plastic product has to contain of 25 to 30% recycled materials. It's immediately boosting our business, right? It works, it's visible, but not here in locals. Of course, our target is to have a circular economy. It has to be closing loop, but we also have to think in the business-wise, because that's need times to be. I believe the government has good intentions, and we will be there somewhere, somehow, But again, it's not just one party or one institution can solve all this problem. We have to collaborate, and it needs the support. It needs CCBO, USA, Circulate Capitals. We need funding. We need regulation that can support us. We need the producers that has the good intentions, willingness, understanding that this all needs their support as well. Because without them creating recyclables packaging, it might be harder for us to recycling all the materials. It's a continuous effort, again and again. It won't end. And why it won't end, I think everyone knows. We cannot stop populations. We cannot stop plastic using. That's why the effort will not end. I believe this also. I emphasize everyone, especially the business owner, the collectors, everyone, to see that in the different dimensions, how important it is to use and to recycling waste, not just a plastic, but any kind of waste. Thank you, Daud.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Daniel. And Pak Bima, maybe turning to you as well. Also, a growing business, right? Receiving different forms of capital and support, but addressing the key challenge also of just the infrastructure and scalability, right? I was hoping that you could kind of build on what's already been said by articulating further, right? How Resiki is putting the infrastructure in, right, to actually build up a waste management facility, and like you said, kind of going from zero landfill solutions to actual circular economy and recycling solutions. Articulate a little bit more what you see as the opportunity at hand, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you're dealing with right now? Is it primarily financial? Is it infrastructure? Well, how is that all coming together to really, as key challenges, right, that your business is facing?
Thank you, Doc. Yes, I think we have to all agree that waste has to be collaboration between government, private, and also the communities. This is the first that we have to keep. Sometimes when we are dealing to some government, it looks like that when we are coming, everything is done. It has to be hand in hand between government and also private and also community. So that's why the key challenge that we always implement to identify every local characteristic, because we cannot easily to implement, particularly for us in upstream. We have to understand about the waste characteristic, because it's divine for everything. We have to understand about how good the local government fiscal, affordable payment, infrastructure which is already established but not operate, or the government should provide the infrastructure. And also the off-taker. We have to understand about the off-taker. Because and also how good actually government to facilitating our business in waste management. For example, like what we already did, the big challenge is that regarding the compost. Everyone could easily say that compost easily to sell. No, it's very difficult. There is we hope that it will become the key role of the government. It can be delivered easily, for free to community, so they can understand this is the waste and turn into the compost, and they can use for the fertilizer at the household and etc. Because we have right now, we have like around 200 tons, and it cannot easily to sell even for free. But when the government coming, it can easily. For example, in Bali, they can bring to Banjar, they can bring to traditional village and etc. So it can be done some part of the waste management policy from the government. And the second, we also produce ecoplank from the woman hygiene, from the single-use diapers and etc. And it has to be supported by the company like Unilever. So yeah, when we build or make like pellets, it can be like a story for the circular economy. All the material can be turned into something valuable. This is the thing. And the third, there is the thing that we have a strong approach in waste, zero waste to landfill. We produce the RDF. But the problem of the RDF is not easily to say, just 3 words, RDF. Because it contains very unique chemical content inside that can receive into the off-taker. It cannot easily, we sell the RDF to the power plant, to the cement kiln, and etc. Because they have like a standard. And our problem is regarding about the chlorine contents for the RDF production, because it will be harmful for the machine, for the boiler, for the power plant, and etc. This is not the best solution, of course. We believe in circular economy, but with support from the government policy, particularly central government, it can be support the waste management, because the government actually, we believe this is the key role. All the regulations are already provided. KPBU, there is already regulation. KSPI, already regulation. Leasing contract, there is there. About the retribution, the tipping fee, there is already there. Permendagri 7/2021. There is already there. But sometimes it's not delivered very well into the local government. They doesn't understand. Regarding the retribution, there is already defined why resiki are set into TPST RDF, not waste to energy, not any other models. Because the government already defined 3 models of the waste management. First, MRF RDF, second, gasification RDF, and the third, it's incinerating RDF. And the cheapest one, the most efficient, the most affordable for the local government is RDF, MRF. But yes, sometimes it's already defined like 360,000 per tons. But yes, sometimes like Putin said, there is no any fiscal, any budget to provide for waste management. And the last thing, waste need cost. It has to be understood. Waste is not money. Need money to process. Because when we are thinking waste is need money, yet we cannot solve the problem of the waste problem in Indonesia. I think that's it.
A quick follow-up question on that, because infrastructure is not, I guess it's a very broad term, which is very clear, like, coming out of your description of your own business, right? It's not just the CapEx and the technology that goes into sorting and processing the waste stream, right? It is the infrastructure of the actual collection and the underlying businesses, right, that are ultimately feeding into that supply chain. It sounds like an incredible challenge, right? Just in terms of the actual scalability of a business, how you are engaging the local community, changing a mindset to, one, collect and feed into this supply stream. And I was just hoping you could weigh in on that, right? With your own context, right? How has your business really, what do you see as a timeline for scaling out your business and building out additional collection facilities and processing facilities?
Yeah. For us, yes. Thank you. We are having strong supported from Circulate Capital, and also Danone Aqua, Circulate Capital and Danone Aqua. Yes, it's not easy business. It's not very easy. Like Regula said, this is not a rocket science. Technology already there, but the characteristic is very, very complicated. Maybe the Elon Musk, if you have any question to Elon Musk, do you want to go to Mars or waste management? I think he will go to the Mars. Although this is not a rocket science, yeah. But yes, we are very grateful and very thankful to Circulate Capital. Very patient with us, because very, very patient for our innovation, for our improvement, because it's not quite easy, but we have achieved, right? And as our target, with the Circulate Capital and Danone Aqua Indonesia, and supported, of course, supported with the government. And we are so happy right now the central government have a vision to provide all the proper building, proper facility. So this is like a blended finance. We understand we can take this part into the technology, operation, and the government provide the infrastructure. We strongly believe that in 2024, we could manage around 3,000 tons per day. And yes, and also with the supported from the circular capital, we are not only invested in Java or Bali, but we hope we can do across Indonesia. And yes, this is like what I say, the key role still on government. Key role still on government. If 100,000 rupiahs per ton, we have to invest also with the building. Yes, there is no any visibility for the finance here. But yes, I hope the government could provide the proper building and etc. So there is like a hand in hand between government and also the private. And yes, to achieve like a 30% of reduction and 70% of the processing, I'm very convinced. If we could bring our mindset into this area, I think we can achieve this target.
Before I am saying kind of where need to shift and maybe look to the audience to raise some questions for the panelists as well, right? We have a broad collection and very experienced participants in the space. Are there any questions immediately right from the audience that you would like to raise for the panelists today? I think we have somebody that would be able to bring around a microphone. We have a question here in the middle.
Thank you. My name is Madadahana from Bapenas. I'm from Pak Snyder's office. I see that very interesting presentation from the panelists. And as far as I heard, that the idea of the blended finance is still to use the combination of probably commercial fund and the philanthropic fund. So to reduce the pollutants from plastic or any kind of other pollutants. My question is that nowadays we heard the pollutants pay principles. It's pollutant pay principles. So I would like to know what the perspective of the panelists, if we integrate or link these pollutant pay principles as a new source of the blended finance. Thank you.
Thank you. And is the question directed to any one individual? I didn't catch that. To anyone? Okay.
Not clear. What was the pollutant one?
Sorry, do you mind just...
Boleh di-repeat, Bapak? Bahasa Indonesia juga boleh.
Oh ya. Jadi sekarang kan ada istilah pollutant pay principle. Jadi siapa yang menciptakan polusi dia harus membayar. Nah, bagaimana tanggapan para panelis jika prinsip ini bisa kita gunakan sebagai suatu sumber baru untuk digunakan di blended finance, sumber keuangan baru. Jadi para polluter itu harus membayar dari prinsipnya, misalnya mereka menciptakan plastik terlalu banyak seperti demikian, lalu mereka harus membayar, dan itu menjadi salah satu sumber dari blended finance nantinya. Terima kasih.
Does anybody want to take a first stab at answering the question?
Yes. That's why our facility name Samtaku. Kita namakan Samtaku. Sampahku, tanggung jawabku. It's mean like yeah, everyone has responsible. Not only the industrial, not only the government, but people, everyone, which pollute the, bring the waste, has to be paid. Jangan sampai masyarakat, oh ya ini sampah. Ya sudah sampah, saya tidak usah bayar, ini tanggung jawabnya pemerintah. That's not the point. So that why in Jimbaran, Bali, our facility, a private facility, we build like that principle. So, kenapa the household has to be paid, everyone has to be paid, not only the producer, government responsible. Yes, it can secure and make sure the sustainability of the waste management sector. This is the something new. Sometimes we are only accusing the government, only accusing the producer. This is your responsible because you are bring the packaging and etc. This is the government regulation because according the government responsible because according the regulation. This is fully responsible. No, so that's why we call sampahku tanggung jawabku. Our waste is our responsible. So responsible we have to pay, and pay can secure. It's actually the waste management in one city. Mungkin itu that is from our side, Doc.
Thank you very much. And certainly, sometimes there's certainly the educational approach and changing mindset of what roles we all play, right, in terms of waste management. Sometimes you also just need a government policy to, a swift kick in the rear. I know the EU implemented actual fines, right, for member countries in terms of not properly, disposing and recycling waste. And but yeah, it's clearly a challenge in terms of building out these business models. Any other questions from the audience? And maybe in the meantime, I know we have one over here on the left, and maybe while the microphone goes over, because this kind of feeds into that, is there's an anonymous question on the screen about data. What role does data really play in the waste space, right? How to address the condition where a challenge of collecting and understanding data in driving waste management, and any plans to contribute more transparent and efficient waste data. I don't know if there was an intended panelist that could speak on this, but I don't know, is this an area that CCBO is involved in?
I think it's correct that the waste data is still a challenge in Indonesia. I think one of the challenge is not the data itself, but the data is so spread out, so there's no like for example the data from the BPS, the Badan Pusat Statistik, is sometimes is different than the Pusat SEPSN. I'm so bad with abbreviations. That's the Pusat data from of waste data at the KLHK, for example, and that's different. Sometimes it's different and could be challenging. I'm sure the company, the industry has also their source of data, and I think one of the reasons why we work, CCBO work at the local level, we focus on that level. So it's scale-wise, it's not easier, but it can be addressed directly at that point. So we work with university, for example, with our grantees to provide data and so that it can contribute to a better data management at the national level. I think
form that policy.
To form a policy, of course. Right. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. And turn back to the question from the audience.
Okay, thank you. I would like to speak in Bahasa because maybe my English is really Actually, saya tertarik dengan apa yang disampaikan oleh Ibu Regula tentang collection system. We highlight for the collection system. Kalau bicara mengenai waste management, sepertinya kita harus berbicara the main actor of the sampah ini, yaitu masyarakat yang ada di lokal. Kalau di sini saya melihat ini kan aktornya aktor yang ada di besar di pusat yang jauh dari masyarakatnya, dan kebanyakan seperti itu gitu. Nah, di sini saya melihat bukan saja untuk mengedukasi lokal masyarakat untuk bisa mendaur ulang atau membuang sampah dengan baik, tapi bagaimana supaya, karena kita di sini kan berbicara circular ekonomi, jadi bagaimana sampah itu bisa membawa benefit buat masyarakatnya. Nah, kalau saya bicara apa yang disampaikan oleh Ibu Regula mengenai collection system, itu kan berarti sepertinya sebetulnya ada di lokal masyarakat. Nah, itu bagaimana kalau misalnya dari Unilever misalnya bekerja sama dengan saya tidak bisa menyebutkan minimarket yang berada di neighbor, di lokal yang gampang, mudah dicapai oleh masyarakat, misalnya untuk paling tidak membawa saset ya dari Unilevernya itu ke sana untuk jadi Unilever menyiapkan misalnya mesinnya gitu ya, untuk bisa dia menukarkan uang itu, sampahnya itu, untuk bisa dibeli lagi produk dari Unilever, seperti itu. Dan itu mungkin jauh lebih menarik ketimbang karena yang sekarang dilakukan itu kan misalnya seperti di Bandung itu ada, kalau nggak salah ada bank bersinar ya, bank bersinar sampah yang collectionnya itu jadi kita mengumpulkan kemudian mengirimkan, dan itu terlalu memberatkan buat masyarakat. Terus kemudian juga ada sistem oktopus kalau nggak salah ya. Nah itu juga seperti itu. Membayangkan saja, lokal itu kan masyarakatnya ada macam-macam ya. Ada orang tua yang mungkin tidak bisa memakai aplikasi dan lain sebagainya. Dan itu harus lebih.
Iya, mungkin saya jawab ya Bu ya?
Ya boleh silakan.
Boleh saya jawab dalam bahasa Inggris Bu supaya yang lainnya bisa?
Boleh, silakan.
Oke, terima kasih. Thank you for the question Ibu, and thank you for the recommendation as well. Actually, Unilever in Indonesia, we have a network of 4,000 waste banks, Bu, bank sampah, and we have them in all over Indonesia. We also have 100 drop boxes available Jabodetabek and also in East Java as well. Last year alone, we collected 24,500 ton of plastics through our waste banks network. So that's quite a lot of plastics that we've been able to manage. But we don't segregate plastics based on who made the plastic, Bu. We take everyone's plastic because one is very difficult to collect our own plastic. It's almost impossible. The second, I think it's quite irresponsible to only collect my plastic alone and not collect everyone's plastic. It doesn't solve the problem. So yes, community-driven programs is necessary, and that's why we have programs at the community level, but also at schools level. We have programs also in schools, in SD and SMP, but also in Islamic boarding schools, in pesantren. Actually, in pesantren, we've taught a few pesantrens how to, one, segregate their plastics, because if you can imagine, pesantren ranges from 500 santri to over 5,000 santri in one pesantren alone. It's one whole community on its own. So what we've done in pesantren is we've taught the pesantren to create their bank sampah, segregate the plastic waste away from the organic waste. We've done two approaches since then. One is to teach the pesantri to create compost from their organic waste, but also create bank sampah for their anorganic waste. And from their organic waste, we've also taught them to do composting, and then also taught them to do urban farming, and then the compost actually fertilizes the urban farms. And then that is, if you can see, that this is an example of
how we implement circular economy in a very closed loop environment in a pesantren. But clearly agree with you, Bu. The community needs to be educated, but it also has to tie back to why it matters to them, right? We can't just teach them, but it doesn't stick. So they need to see the value, not just in terms of health, and also in terms of cleanliness of the environment, but also economic. And I can safely say as well, for our 450,000 women in Bank Sampah, Bu. 4,250 Bank Sampah participants, around 90% of them are women. And they are very, very enthusiastic because they see the financial impact that can help them, especially during pandemic, actually. So they can really sense the profit of doing this. They clean their environment, they make sure the environment is clean for the children, but they make money from it as well. Thank you, Ibu.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for that response. Any other questions from the audience? We do have one more anonymous question up here on the screen that I think is a really good one and to sum things up, but polling the audience for any more questions. Well, the remaining, maybe while we wait for a remaining hand, the question on the screen is really what are the major obstacles, right, for blended finance to be implemented in Indonesia? I think this is a challenge not specific to Indonesia, right? It speaks to, even a conversation I was having with colleagues over at Bappenas earlier is ultimately, single source of financing, right, and how you really navigate how do the components come together to deliver, a financial solution that is ultimately economic for the underlying project, curious in terms of the participants on today's panel. I don't know, Regula, could you speak to some of the work in terms of how your donor community, the USA DFC investment guarantee really came together? Who was really driving that at the end of the day, and how big of a challenge was that for ultimately closing?
Well, I would have to, I have not been part of that discussions early on, but I think it is a common understanding that for industries which are chronically underserved by the traditional financial industry, right, blended finance mechanisms are really an entry into building such industries, and therefore the collaboration with USAID and DFC. I think what is important that early on, it is clear, right, how does the blended finance mechanism correlate to achieving the SDGs, and what we really want to build with that. I think it is ultimately the second part of that question also is how can it then become sustainable, right? I truly believe blended finance mechanisms are only here to incubate, to kickstart an industry or businesses which are exactly chronically underserved. At the end of the day, if we can showcase to the traditional investors that not only there is a tremendous environmental and social impact, but you can actually have a competitive return, then it's a no-brainer for them to invest, right? But with the industry we're in plastic recycling, the problem really was that we first needed to find these investment opportunities. We needed to find a Pak Bima and a Pak Daniel, right? We needed to find those SMEs, start working with them, engaging them, to enable them then to grow. Once you can showcase this is a pipeline, you can invest in all these businesses, you can make money, it's economically feasible, then traditional investors will come along. It is just to really help them understand the market, understand the risks inherited in the market, understand the approach we have to really uplifting those companies to the level where these institutional investors come in. And then honestly, I think it takes its natural course. But absolutely, it's key. At the end of the day, institutional investors only invest if they see that you can make money out of it. And that's how economics work, and that's what we heard from Daniel, right?
it is also about economics. They need to make money to continuously feed the growth of their operation. And so it's an interplay. I mean, US DFC and USAID, you know, obviously you understand those dynamics, and that's why I think looking at the magnitude of the impact ocean plastic has, it was clear that this partnership, together with the corporations who are key in the offtake of the material, in these partnerships, right, in building the market, that it was clear that this partnership is really set for success.
Thank you for that response. And I see we are out of time. I just wanted to maybe summarize, you know, we're, you know, clearly in a period of increased economic uncertainty, right? Rising interest rates, inflationary pressures, and whatnot. The waste management sector, I hope, is a sector that is somewhat insulated from that, right? In the sense that there is always a supply chain, but naturally, right, the broader macro environment impacts investment strategies. I hope that, you know, and then also, you know, speaking as coming from a DFI, you know, we traditionally see our role as investing into economic cycles, right? Particularly down economic cycles to ensure that we're helping maintain progress in these key sectors. And I really hope that blended finance is part of that solution, right? In achieving an economic profile that is more conducive for the building of your ultimate businesses. And so with that, thank you all for your time. Thank you to the panelists for you know, stepping up here, walking us through a little bit more of your business and your outlook in this important space. And appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you very much for all the speakers and moderator for a fruitful discussion. And we would like to ask all the speakers and moderator to leave the stage. All right, I'm so sorry. Can you please still stay on the stage because we're having a documentation? Yes. We are going to have a documentation right in front of you. Maybe if it's convenient for you, you can open your mask. If you want to wear it, it's also okay. All right. Facing the front camera there. Okay, wait. We are going to wait for Pak Jeff to join the photo session. All right. In the middle, okay. All right, the honorable speakers, you may see the camera. All right, distinguished participants, we are now at the end of today's event, and we would like to invite Mr. Jeff Cohen, USAID Mission Director, to say a few closing statements. Mr. Jeff Cohen, if you are ready, you may come up to the stage. Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please, closing statement from Mr. Jeff Cohen.
All right, well listen, first of all, thank you all so much for joining us here in person and online. I think that today I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the challenges that we face in the blended finance sector, and specifically as it pertains to solid waste management, recycling, downstream, upstream. I've also learned a lot of new terms today. I think the discussion highlighted the need for collaboration which is something USAID can't live without, because we're only one factor, one grain of sand, one entity in the mix of many that are required, as you heard from all the panelists. No one entity can work on the problem of solid waste management, ocean plastics, and a myriad of other topics alone. We need to work together to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. But I think importantly, we heard over and over again, it's not rocket science. I think that's important. I really love the idea of better to solve our problems here on Earth than go to Mars, right? But we have to put together the right entities to identify how we can make these marketable investments, because they are investments, as we heard. Waste is not gold because it has to be processed into it, right? I thought that was another good point that was made today. I think today we've witnessed a small number of institutions that are working together in this space, but we also identified the enormity of the problem, right? Billions of dollars are needed, and it's not just the money, it's the actors, the players who want to participate in this space. I thought it was very important that we had representation from the private sector that's utilizing plastics to sell its products, but also funding hundreds of waste banks to collect those products and others, not just Unilever plastics, but others, to participate in the solution. You know, in the ideal world, the free market, right, Adam Smith would take care of this problem, but we're not in an ideal world. And so that's where you need government, private sector, DFIs, small businesses, and community members to work together on the solutions. I think you need governments to set regulations that perhaps say no single-use plastics, period. Or if you are going to use single-use plastics, then you're going to make sure that every single one of them is recycled. I think that's a good place for the government. I like the idea of government building some infrastructure so that communities can collect plastics, compost, and then prepare them to be sent to the next level of the value chain. USAID is clear in its role. We provide resources, we provide convening authority, like today, to bring actors together to work on these problems. Blended finance, which is what this event is all about, and is an important tool to demonstrate this collective effort where we can find our strengths, identify our weaknesses, and then put our part into it to solve the problems together. Blended finance is not a substitute for things. It is yet another tool in the toolbox that includes policy and institutional reforms, lowering the risk, transaction costs for finance institutions to invest in these areas that are underserved. I think there also remains a need to identify and create the enabling environments to de-risk these crucial sectors where these gaps exist. I think private sector engagement also includes the smart use of technology, blended finance. It will continue to be a priority for USAID across the world and should be a priority for everyone. Kerjasama yang baik antara pemerintah dan swasta akan membantu Indonesia dan negara-negara berkembang di dunia mencapai tujuan pembangunan. Bersama kita membangun masyarakat yang damai, sejahtera, adil, dan makmur. Thank you all very much for attending today. It has been our pleasure to work with our friends at Bapanas to host this very important event that not only shows us the way forward, but also demonstrates that we're actually on the ground doing these things now. We need more help, and we hope that today can inspire others to join this effort. Terima kasih banyak.
All right, thank you so much, Pak Chef Kohan. A very nice Indonesian language of you. Okay, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, would like to thank you for all your exquisite participation. We hope that today's sessions will be a breakthrough for the implementation of blended financing in Indonesia. As the MC of today's event, I am Irene Wenas. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to close our first sessions. Thank you for all participants in this ballroom and also participants that joining this event virtually through Zoom meeting. I would like to apologize for any inconvenience throughout the event. That's all for me. Thank you and good afternoon. I have a little bit announcement for offline participants. Again, for offline participants, lunch is provided at the Greece restaurant at 7th floor, and we will have 1 hour for the lunch. So we wish you to come back to the room at 1:30.